Chapter 61, The Uchiha Extermination Plan. Not bad. After testing Kodo Amatsukami and Kodo Amatsukami, Radiance, Uchiha Ren stretched lazily. Thanks to the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, whether he used time acceleration, time reversal or Shursui's genjutsu, the backlash was no longer anywhere near as brutal. As long as he didn't drive his eyes into suicidal overuse, there were practically no side effects, no creeping blindness, no collapse. The next step is the Rinnegan. Ren's gaze sharpened as he fell into thought. In canon, Madara Uchiha transplanted Hashirama's cells after the battle at the Valley of the End. At death's door, he awakened the Sage of Six Paths chakra and evolved his eternal Mangekyo into the Rinnegan. Sasuke had it even simpler. After receiving the Sage's power, his left eye evolved into a six-tomo Rinnegan. Rin snorted and dismissed it. Whatever. I'll clean up Konoha first. With the God-tier sign-in system, he didn't need to gamble his life on experiments. He just had to keep signing in and growing. And besides, Shursui was dead. Which meant Danzo wouldn't be able to sit still anymore. Rin found himself looking forward to it. To the moment Danzo, the masked man and Itachi finally moved to erase the Uchiha. The calm before the blade. The next few days, Konoha stayed eerily quiet. Even Shursui's death didn't cause a public stir. Neither the Uchiha clan nor the village leadership made any official statement. A rumor quietly spread instead. Shursui had mental issues and jumped into the Naka River. Most civilians and shinobi only felt regret. Shursui of the body flicker, gone like that? But what they didn't see was the truth beneath the surface. The Uchiha became even more restrained, keeping their heads down. Meanwhile, Root and ANBU began moving more frequently, making more contacts, meeting more often. Every clan with influence started acting cautious, careful with their words, careful with their movements. Because they weren't idiots. Konoha looked peaceful. But underneath, the water was boiling. Root headquarters. Deep underground inside a cold, dim office. Danzo shifted his bandaged right arm and stared at the figure in front of him. Itachi Uchiha. Have you decided? His voice was icy, sharpened like a blade. Shursui is dead. The conflict between the Uchiha and the village is beyond repair now. This is the best moment to implement the Uchiha extermination plan. Before they finish preparing, we strike first. We strike hard. Across from him stood an ANBU in uniform, a cat-faced mask covering his features, a sword strapped to his back. Itachi's voice came out tight and hoarse. Is there really no other way? Shursui already died to prove his resolve. Isn't that enough? Enough? Danzo sneered. Not even close. The Uchiha problem is only solved when the Uchiha disappear from Konoha. Itachi's shoulders sank. A quiet, hopeless exhale. Neither of them knew the truth, that Shursui hadn't been killed by the village or by the clan. But the hatred had gone too far. The Uchiha believed the higher-ups did it. The higher-ups believed the Uchiha did it. And so both sides almost politely settled on the same official lie. Shursui was unstable and he killed himself. Danzo's patience snapped. Itachi. Agree or refuse. If you refuse, Root and ANBU will act without you. And when that happens, you know exactly what the outcome will be. Itachi clenched his fists. For a moment he looked like someone about to shatter. Then he forced the words out. Fine. He had no choices left. Especially not after the third Hokage stopped meeting him, proof that the village leadership had already made its decision. So Itachi swallowed his soul and called it duty. For Konoha's stability. For the village's future. And above all, for Sasuke. Smart choice. Danzo rose slowly, satisfaction curling at the edge of his voice. We move 3 nights from now. And you will handle your parents yourself. Don't let Fugaku resist. Understood. Then, Itachi's eyes turned a deep, unnatural red. Mangekyo Sharingan bloomed. A wave of killing intent rolled across the room. Danzo. I'll accept your terms. But if Sasuke suffers in Konoha even once, don't blame me for being ruthless. Danzo's face tightened, but he nodded. Relax. I'll give strict orders. With you alive, we won't touch Sasuke. Itachi paused, then asked, heavy and serious. And Ren? Who handles him? Ren was already an elite taijutsu jonin 7 years ago. He's not weak. Danzo's lip curled. Someone will deal with him. A mere taijutsu specialist. We'll send him to the grave along with the rest. The moment Ren's name came up, Danzo's resentment flared. Ren had never once shown him respect. Now Danzo would erase the Uchiha and drown the clan in its own blood. Good. Itachi held Danzo's gaze for one final beat, then vanished. Danzo remained alone in the dim office, greed flickering in his eye. What a waste of Mangekyo. But then he thought of Fugaku's eyes and his expression steadied. This time he wouldn't just wipe out the clan. He would harvest Sharingan in bulk and graft them onto his arm. Chapter 62, Darkened Power tenfold, Redeemed Weakness threefold. 3 days, huh? Not long after Uchiha Itachi left, the air in Danzo's office rippled faintly. A spiral distortion formed. The masked man, Uchiha Obito, stepped out, voice cold and flat. Yes. Danzo didn't even look up. This time, the third Hokage will turn a blind eye. ANBU will also assist. A large barrier will be deployed to cover the entire Uchiha district, so we must act fast, wipe them out in the shortest time possible. Understood. Obito nodded, then added casually as if discussing the weather. If you're worried, I can bring in a few outsiders. Let them join this once-in-history extermination banquet. No need. Danzo rejected it instantly. More participants meant fewer Sharingan for him. Obito shrugged. He hadn't expected the greedy old bastard to agree anyway. Danzo's eye narrowed. About Uchiha Ren, you're handling him? Confident? 7 years ago, Ren was already an elite Jonin. He may be Kage level now. And a Kage level taijutsu specialist isn't easy to deal with. There was suspicion in Danzo's tone. This masked man always appeared and vanished like smoke. No one truly knew what he could do. If he turned out to be all bluff, the extermination plan's success rate would drop. Obito's voice sharpened, different. Personal. Relax. He'll die. This time I'll show Rin what a real genius looks like. Before Danzo could respond, space warped again. Obito vanished. Danzo stared at the empty air for a moment, frowning. What was that reaction? Rin being a prodigy on par with Kakashi Hatake was common knowledge. So why did the usually emotionless Obito sound like he'd been stabbed in an old scar? Danzo shook it off. Whatever. I'll focus on the extermination preparations. His gaze returned to the map on his desk. A detailed layout of the Uchiha district, patrol distribution, guard rotations, and the fastest routes to cut them down. Obito's old wounds. After leaving Danzo's office, Obito appeared at a training ground in Konoha's central area. He stood there, still, rigid, as if the air itself had dragged him back to a time he hated. His fist clenched. His expression darkened. Obito, you're too weak. Too weak. Did you forget to eat today? You're really too weak. Those voices. Those humiliations. They replayed in his head like a curse. Back then, Ren was the Uchiha genius, spoken of in the same breath as Kakashi. And Obito? He'd been the clan's embarrassment. The dead last. Same age. Same clan. Of course Obito had tried to compete. So he challenged Ren. Again and again. And again. Every single time it ended the same way. One punch. No resistance. He'd be sent flying like trash. Once. 10 times. 20 times. The number didn't matter. What mattered was what it carved into him. Ren became an obsession stamped into Obito's bones. A wound that never healed. Right beside the other one. Ren's death. Now the Uchiha were about to be wiped out anyway. So this time, Obito would personally kill Ren. And finally rip that obsession out by the root. Black Zetsu and White Zetsu. A moment later, the fused mass of Black Zetsu and White Zetsu seeped up from the ground. White Zetsu squinted at Obito. Your emotions are off. It's nothing. Obito exhaled. Just remembered some unpleasant things. Unpleasant? White Zetsu grinned, like he already knew the answer. Don't tell me it's that time you kept getting punched through the air by Ren. Shut up. Obito's voice dropped, lethal. White Zetsu laughed awkwardly and backed off. Black Zetsu spoke in a rasping tone, more thoughtful. Ren is strange. Every time we monitored him, he trained taijutsu like a machine. No fatigue. No breaks. Even Black Zetsu sounded faintly unsettled. Back when they were choosing a successor for Madara Uchiha, there had been two candidates worth watching: Obito and Ren. But after observing Ren for a long time, Madara had dismissed him. In Madara's words, "No matter how strong taijutsu is, it's limited." Obito's mouth curled. "Doesn't matter. This time we settle old and new debts together. And the Uchiha will be erased." "Fine." Black Zetsu and White Zetsu nodded in unison. After all, a darkened Obito was no longer the old dead last fool. If the saying held true, darkness boosts power tenfold, redemption cuts it by 3. Then killing Rin should be easy. And as for why the Uchiha had to be exterminated, it was the same reason Obito embraced the Eye of the Moon plan in the first place. Madara's despair, his hatred, his exhaustion with the clan had been poured into him. And once Obito accepted that path, he stopped seeing the Uchiha as his people. They were just another obstacle. Another piece to remove. Chapter 63. Wait. Did the air crack? Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, 3 days were gone. That night a full moon hung high, just like during the Nine Tails incident. Pale moonlight washed over Konoha, and the chill in the air felt unnatural. Across the village, the major clans seemed to have received the same notice. Almost in unison, they issued a strict curfew to their members. No matter what happens tonight, no one leaves the house. To prevent any accidents, ANBU were already mobilized, fully armed, fully alert. Hokage Tower, the long night begins. Inside the Hokage's office, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, dragged hard on his pipe and let out a tired sigh. Another sleepless night. Ha 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 ha. The Uchiha brought this on themselves. Elder Koharu Uchiha was practically glowing with excitement. Beside her, Hamura Mitokado wore the same satisfied grin, like they were watching a glorious page of history being written. "Hiruzen," Koharu said, almost giddy, "we're finally finishing what the second Hokage couldn't." Hamura nodded. "We should be celebrating." Hiruzen exhaled a cloud of smoke and chuckled softly. Indeed. He had always preferred to weaken the Uchiha gradually. But since Danzo Shimura was willing to bear the blame, Hiruzen could simply enjoy the results. And afterward, how to deal with Danzo and how to handle Itachi Uchiha. He'd already decided. Koharu leaned forward, smiling. Once the Uchiha are gone, the Konoha military police force should be handed to the Elder Council. Hamura added cheerfully, "You have ANBU. Danzo has Root. Giving us the police force isn't too much to ask, is it?" Hiruzen stared at them for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fine. They were all tied to the same rope now. No one was clean. Koharu and Hamura exchanged a glance, relieved, satisfied. Good. Then we'll wait for Danzo's good news. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly as he lifted the pipe again. It should begin soon. Uchiha District, the knife slips in. Meanwhile, the Uchiha District felt like it was balancing on the edge of collapse. Shirsue's sudden death had left a lingering shadow over the entire clan. And under the moonlight, the streets looked like a city bracing for siege, storm clouds pressing down, ready to crush everything. Because Root already knew the district's layout, patrol routes, and shift change timing. Shadowy figures slipped inside like ghosts. Worst of all, the Uchiha sensory ninja assigned to Night Watch had already been eliminated. By Itachi. So from start to finish, the Uchiha detected nothing. Not a whisper. Not a ripple. Fugaku's home, the quiet before the collapse. Inside the district at its center, Uchiha Fugaku's home. The night unfolded like any other. After dinner, Sasuke went to bed first. At his bedroom door, he turned back, eyes bright, voice hopeful. "Big brother, you'll take me to the academy tomorrow, right?" "I will." Itachi forced a small smile. Sasuke beamed, bounced into his room and shut the door, already imagining the perfect morning. He idolized his genius brother. He always had. The moment Sasuke's door clicked shut, Fugaku finally spoke, low and heavy. "Good child. But you still chose the village." From the kitchen, Mikoto stepped into the living room, calm, almost serene. "Itachi. You're going to do it, aren't you?" Itachi froze. "Father. Mother. His mind went blank. He hadn't expected them to see through him so easily. Mikoto smiled gently, shaking her head. "Silly boy. We raised you. Of course we know. Whatever you choose, we support you. Her expression dimmed just slightly. The only one we can't stop worrying about is your little brother. Fugaka's voice was steadier than Itachi's shaking breath. I won't blame you. Because I'm your father. As clan head, I failed. He and Mikoto exchanged a look, like they had already accepted the end. Then Fugaku spoke again, quiet and final. Do it. Itachi's eyes burned. He swallowed hard, forcing back tears, and drew the short blade strapped across his back. He didn't want to. But the weight on his shoulders was crushing, the village, Sasuke, Shursui, and the deep disappointment he'd come to feel toward his own clan. I'm sorry. He lifted the cat-faced Anbu mask and put it on, hiding the agony on his face. Then, with the blade in hand, he moved. No hesitation. No mercy. Root, smiling in the dark. At the exact moment Itachi struck. As if it had all been timed. The Root operatives hidden throughout the Uchiha district flashed cold smiles. It begins. But then, something strange happened. A sound faint and wrong crawled through the night. And before anyone could react, the air inside the Uchiha district cracked. Like glass. Right in front of them, thin fractures spread through empty space, spiderweb lines forming where nothing should exist. A ripple. A shiver. And then, more cracks. As if reality itself was splintering. Chapter 64, All of you get out. Crack. A sound that shouldn't exist, like a hairline fracture spreading across a mirror, rang through the Uchiha district. Then another. And another. Under the pale moon, thin fissures spiderwebbed across empty space. Air doesn't crack. But tonight it did. For half a breath everyone froze, Uchiha and Root alike, because the instinct in every shinobi screamed the same warning. This isn't normal. This isn't a technique they recognize. And the worst part? The cracks weren't random. They were moving. The roofline, the one behind the cracks. On the highest ridge of a nearby roof, a figure stood with his hands in his pockets, cloak fluttering in the night wind. Ren. His eyes were calm, too calm for a night like this. The massacre had started. He could feel it, unfamiliar chakra signatures blooming across the district like rot spreading under skin. Root had entered. And Itachi had already drawn his blade. Ren exhaled once. A faint pale shimmer wrapped around his right hand. Not chakra. Not exactly. It was that same violent alien force that had once made the sky fracture above the Nine Tails. The tremor power. Ren didn't raise his voice. He didn't shout a jutsu name. He simply pressed. Crack, crack, crack. The fractures multiplied across the district like invisible glass breaking in slow motion. And then, they aimed themselves. Root, panic behind the masks. Root operatives already positioned on rooftops and in alley shadows, stiffened as the night turned wrong. What is that? Is it a barrier collapsing? No, this isn't chakra structure. Someone found us, scatter. They moved fast, disciplined, practiced. But discipline didn't matter when the battlefield itself became a weapon. One operative dashed across an alley. And a crack slid through the air in front of him like a blade. He didn't even have time to scream. His body detonated into red mist, as if something had crushed him from the inside. A second Root shinobi tried to leap away. The crack followed. Pop! Another burst of blood. No hand seals. No dodging. No counter. Just death. The remaining operatives felt their scalps go cold beneath their masks. This wasn't an ambush. This was an execution. The Uchiha, instant mobilization. For years the village had squeezed the Uchiha into a corner. But the Uchiha were still the Uchiha. The moment the first foreign chakra signatures were sensed, alarms went up. Enemy presence. Too many, this is a wipeout. Get civilians to the shelters now. Shinobi poured into the streets, Sharingan spinning red under the moon, kunai and blades flashing. Civilians sprinted for emergency tunnels the clan had prepared long ago, because deep down, the Uchiha had always known this day might come. Then someone shouted the name no one wanted to hear. Root. Rage hit like a spark thrown into oil. So it's true. They're erasing us. Kill them. Root gives the order, too late. A Root Jonin, cornered and furious, finally roared from the shadows. To hell with the cracks, move. Uchiha civilians, Uchiha shinobi, leave none alive. He forced his operatives forward. He had to. Because if Root lost the element of surprise, the casualties would spike. And if casualties spiked, the village leadership would start asking unpleasant questions. So Root rushed in. And the cracks answered. All of you. Get out. Ren's voice rolled across the district. Not loud, just absolute. It carried the kind of pressure that made bones feel heavy. All of you, he said, cold and flat. Get out. The cracks moved again. Not like a jutsu. Like a decision. Dozens of Root operatives didn't even get to complete their first hand seal. Cracks slid through them. And they burst apart in synchronized sprays of blood that painted rooftops and alley walls. Panic snapped Root's spine. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Wind style, wind blade. Shadow clones. Flames rushed forward. Wind shrieked. Clones exploded into being. And every technique that touched the fractured air shattered on contact, broken apart by a violent shockwave that made the street stones rattle. Clones fared even worse. The cracks ignored the fakes with terrifying accuracy. And struck the real body. Root operatives started backing away without realizing it. Their masks hid their faces. But not their fear. Fugaku's home, Itachi stalls mid-strike. In the heart of the district inside Fugaku's house, the moment had already reached its edge. Itachi's short blade was raised. His breathing was steady, too steady for what he was about to do. Then, crack. A fracture formed near the ceiling. And Itachi's weapon exploded midair, shattered into glittering fragments that clattered across the floor. Itachi froze. His pupils tightened. He looked up, then instinctively looked at Fugaku, like he was asking a question he didn't want answered. Is this the clan's secret weapon? Fugaku's expression was just as stunned. So was Mikoto's. They had prepared to die. They hadn't prepared for the night itself to turn into a blade aimed at Root. Fugaku's brow furrowed hard. That voice. That pressure. For a heartbeat, something old and buried stirred in his memory. Then Fugaku's eyes hardened. We're not dying here. He turned to Mikoto immediately, voice sharp and controlled, the voice of a clan head in a war zone. Take Sasuke to the shelter. Now. Mikoto's arms tightened around Sasuke without hesitation. Fugaku didn't look away from Itachi as he continued, each word landing like iron. I'll take responsibility. Itachi stood there, bladeless, frozen in place. Because his plan had just been shattered along with his weapon. Outside, the district burned with chaos. Root operatives died in red fog. Uchiha shinobi mobilized in fury. And somewhere above it all, unseen by most, Ren watched the board shift under his hand. Tonight wasn't going to end the way anyone planned.
Wait! Hold up. Stop for a sec. Look, if you've already made it this far into the video and you're still here, come on, subscribe, bro. All right, I see you rolling your eyes. I'm moving. I'll get out of the way now so you can get back to the good stuff. But seriously, stick around and finish listening.
Chapter 65,
It's worth
Domestic
it.
Beatdown, 2v1 Tag Team. Father. Itachi steadied his breathing. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. The Uchiha don't need to exist anymore. Fugaku froze mid-step. What did you just say? He turned back sharply, voice hard as iron. Uchiha Itachi, listen carefully. You're not only my son. You're a member of the Uchiha clan. I don't ever want to hear you say something that disgraceful again. No. Itachi's guilt flickered, then vanished beneath conviction. He drew a kunai grip firm. Konoha and the Uchiha can't coexist. So tonight, whether you want to die or not, you will. Fugaku's eyes narrowed. He exhaled, slow, heavy. Itachi. You're my son. I'm your son, Itachi snapped, voice cracking, but I'm also a shinobi of Konoha. I'm caring too much, do you understand that? Pain flashed across his face. But the moment he thought of the will of fire, the irreconcilable clash between village and clan, and Sasuke, his expression twisted into something fierce. The Uchiha deserve to die. You're my parents, you should understand. The clan's mindset can't coexist with the village. His eyes turned an eerie scarlet. The Mangekyo Sharingan pattern bloomed. Itachi had lost control. He wasn't trying to persuade them anymore. He just wanted them gone, Fugaku, Mikoto, the clan, all of it. Fugaku stared at him. Then, without haste, his own eyes changed. Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi. Fugaku said quietly, voice colder than the moonlight. As your father, I failed you. His gaze sharpened. But I've figured something out. Sasuke is better off being raised by me and your mother. He took a step forward. You're already ruined. And I won't let Sasuke end up the same. Itachi's face went blank. Father. For a heartbeat he looked like a child again, staring at a man he'd spent his whole life chasing. He remembered that line over and over. Itachi, that's my son. And now. You're ruined. His world tilted. If his father was giving up on him, then that meant Fugaku was going to lead the clan against Konoha. Then everything Itachi had sacrificed, everything he'd believed, was meaningless. Why is it like this? The room turned hostile. The air felt like it was pressing down on his throat. His hands shook. His eyes stayed red. His voice dropped to a single icy syllable. Enough. Fugaku lifted his kunai, unflinching. Then let me show you what your father can do. Killing intent rose. A fight was about to erupt. Mikoto enters. Right then. Mikoto flashed in from the hallway, Sasuke in her arms. She appeared directly in front of Itachi. Her Sharingan spun into 3 tomo. Smack. A clean, brutal slap cracked across Itachi's face. The force made him stagger back several steps. He blinked like his brain had short-circuited. Mikoto's expression didn't soften. Not even a little. She was serious. She might not show it often, but she was still a Uchiha, still a veteran. With the Sharingan sharpening her timing and control, that hit wasn't a mother's scolding. It was a shinobi's strike. Itachi was stunned. He couldn't even react. Mikoto, who'd always indulged him, had just hit him like she meant it. Fugaku's eyes lit up, almost impressed. Mikoto. Let me. He stepped in. Smack. 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 A rapid series of slaps hammered across the other side of Itachi's face. Hard. Precise. No mercy. You unfilial little bastard, Fugaku snarled. You want to butcher your clan, kill your parents, what are you, an animal? Smack. Mikoto slapped him again, voice flat and furious. You think you can raise your hand to your own family? Smack. Fugaku followed. Still want to talk about justice? Smack. Mikoto again. Still want to talk about the will of fire? Smack. Fugaku again. In less than a minute, Itachi's cheeks were swollen and bright red, 2 huge handprints stamped across his face like seals. He stood there, completely hollow. Like he'd been forcibly rebooted. He didn't even know how to be angry anymore. He was just stuck. Sasuke's POV. In Mikoto's arms, Sasuke kept his eyes squeezed shut, peeking through the tiniest slit. Big brother is getting beaten, so I should keep pretending I'm asleep. He immediately shut his eyes tighter. Nope. Not my problem. He didn't understand the truth. He thought Itachi had simply done something bad, and was being punished. He had no idea. His parents weren't disciplining him. They were hitting him hard enough to snap him out of a massacre. Chapter 66, Rally Up. Now. Sasuke kept his eyes squeezed shut as the slaps echoed in the room. Yeah. I should probably behave from now on. Growing up, he'd heard the same thing more times than he could count. Itachi is a genius. Itachi is mom and dad's pride. If even Itachi could get disciplined like that. Sasuke's resolve formed, then he drifted off, half asleep. Mikoto cast a simple genjutsu to keep him out cold. Then she gave Fugaku a brief nod. He's out. Completely. Take Sasuke to the shelter, Fugaku said, drawing a slow breath. I haven't been a good clan head, or a good father. His eyes hardened. But tonight I'll carry what I'm supposed to carry. If the Uchiha are going to be wiped out, then Konoha will pay a heavy price. Mikoto glanced at Itachi. A flicker of pain crossed her eyes. But she still turned and left Sasuke in her arms. Itachi's expression twisted. I understand now, he said urgently. Father. Mother, you've been hit with the strongest genjutsu Konoha Tsukimi. There's no other explanation for such a sudden change. He stepped forward, voice rising toward hysteria. Father, don't move. Let me kill you. Once you die, the genjutsu will break and the Uchiha won't exist anymore. Fugaku's face went dark. You're sick. As clan head, he'd seen every kind of illusion. No genjutsu was slipping past him quietly, not with his eyes. And Kodo Amitsukami? Don't make me laugh. Shursui was dead. And his eyes, if anyone had them, would be in the hands of Konoha's upper ranks. Itachi's gaze fell into a freezing pit. Mikoto was already far enough away with Sasuke. And his father wouldn't wake up. Everyone's abandoning me. Something inside him snapped. Fine. His Mangekyo spun, pupils burning. Then die. His hands flew through seals. Fire style, great dragon fire technique. Heat exploded outward. A massive fire dragon roared from Itachi's mouth, surging toward Mikoto's retreating back. Your opponent is me. Fugaku blurred in, cutting the line of fire. His hands mirrored the same seals. Fire style, great dragon fire technique. Boom! 2 fire dragons collided midair, detonating into a scorching shockwave that tore through the living room and shattered what was left of the interior. In the instant the house broke apart, father and son locked eyes. Then both launched out into the night. Meanwhile, the Uchiha district. The streets reeked of blood. Root shinobi kept dying, one after another, bursting into red mist as those unnatural cracks in the air snapped at them like invisible jaws. The Uchiha, meanwhile, realized something crucial. Those cracks only targeted Root. So instead of panicking, Uchiha forces began moving with purpose, converging on the central plaza. Because numbers mattered. A gathered Uchiha force was terrifying. Damn it, what is this? On a rooftop, Aburame Ryoma dodged another tearing ripple and watched yet another Root operative explode. His heart sank. These were hand-picked men, Danzo's best. And they were being erased before they could even properly engage. Root had already lost over a third of its force. A blur landed beside him. Danzo. His expression was ugly, tight with fury. In his mind, tonight had been perfect. A sealed district. ANBU cooperating. Itachi as the knife from within. He hadn't even planned to enter until the slaughter was done, then he'd stroll in and harvest eyes. Now? From that earlier voice and these impossible cracks. There was clearly a hidden monster behind the Uchiha. Lord Danzo, Ryoma said tensely, what do we do? Our Jonin are fewer than theirs. If this continues, Root will be wiped out. Rally them, Danzo growled. No more scattered fighting. He stared toward the plaza. The Uchiha are assembling there, aren't they? His mouth curled. Good. We'll go too and wipe them out in one sweep. Ryoma immediately signaled the nearby Root operatives. Orders spread. Across the district, Root units began converging on the central plaza. And as they moved, the cracks in the air suddenly vanished. Root shinobi froze, then exhaled in relief. The cracks disappeared. Move, rally up. We'll have to take the Uchiha head-on. Finally, we can move freely again. Under the night sky, Root accelerated, closing in on the plaza. Chapter 67, One Punch Blows It Apart. The moment the Uchiha extermination plan began, Konoha's ANBU activated a massive genjutsu barrier that had been prepared long ago. Its purpose was simple. Seal off the entire Uchiha district. Keep the fighting contained. Make sure whatever happened inside wouldn't spill out and shake the rest of the village. Because of that, the unnatural sight of the air cracking inside the district never reached the outside world. Even when the stench of blood drifted out, the ANBU station beyond the barrier only sneered, confident in their assumption. That's Uchiha blood. Uchiha district, Ren's room. Inside his room, Ren rolled his shoulders like he was warming up before a workout. They're gathering, he muttered, calm as ever. Good. Earlier, he'd used Observation Haki and the Tremor Fruit's power to give Root a proper welcome. Those fractures in the air, the invisible shockwaves, the voice that had rolled across the district. That had all been him. And those hairline fractures still hanging in the air like spiderwebs? They weren't just intimidation. Through them, Ren had quietly used Kodo Amitsukami, just a slight nudge, to adjust Fugaku and Mikoto's thinking. That was why they'd woken up at the critical moment instead of dying the same way they did in canon, cut down effortlessly by Itachi in their own home. Of course, Itachi's mental break? That part genuinely surprised Ren. He hadn't expected Itachi to lose control so hard. Ren flexed his eyes once, testing the eternal Mangekyo. 2 uses of Kodo Amatsukami including Radiance, 1 year cooldown. He shrugged. Worth it. Early use meant early cooldown. He had no regrets. Ren rose to his feet, expression indifferent. All right. Time for me to show up. The central plaza, both sides assemble. At the exact same time. Under the clean, bright moonlight, the Uchiha District's central plaza filled with shinobi. On one side the Uchiha. Fugaku at the front. More than 600 clan shinobi behind him, furious, humiliated and ready to die fighting. On the other side Root. Danzo at the front. Itachi beside him. And behind them, less than 300 operatives left. They looked grim. They looked bruised. Because before they'd even properly clashed, the cracks in the air had already torn through them and erased a third of their manpower. Uchiha voices boiled over. Konoha's higher-ups are filthy. They tried to erase us in our sleep. If the air hadn't cracked, we'd already be dead. We don't just fight back, we burn Root to the ground. And Itachi, traitor. After the clan head beat him half to death, he still doesn't repent. Shameful. The Uchiha were raging, so angry the plaza felt like it was vibrating. Across from them, Root stayed far quieter. Infiltration had been the key. If they'd struck cleanly from the shadows, the extermination would have been a certainty. But reality had turned cruel. That impossible air fracture phenomenon shattered their advantage before it even began. Danzo's face was thunder. He glared at Itachi. Itachi, explain. Why is your father still alive? Itachi touched his swollen cheek, pain flickering across his face. His voice remained flat. I'll kill him myself. Then, after a beat, he added, coldly cautious. The Uchiha have a hidden weapon. We have to be careful. Hidden weapon. Danzo sneered. I have one too. He didn't know what had caused the air to crack. But he knew one thing. That masked man still hadn't shown his face. And once that man arrived, Root would strike together. High-end power decided wars. Not head counts. Spiral space, a new piece enters the board. Just then, the air above the plaza twisted into a spiral. Space warped like a vortex. A man in a black cloak stepped out midair, wearing a swirling mask. Obito Uchiha. Finally, Danzo murmured, a thin smile appearing. All pieces were in place. Now the battle could truly begin. Obito's gaze swept across the plaza. His voice was cold. Seems the Uchiha have secrets I didn't know about. Then he looked straight at Fugaku. Call out the one who made that voice. After tonight, the Uchiha will vanish from the shinobi world. Fugaku's expression changed instantly. That mask. That aura. A memory slammed into him like a blade. You. His voice went hoarse. You're the one behind the Ninetales incident 7 years ago. He turned slightly, eyes flicking to Danzo with disbelief. Back then you colluded with outsiders. And now you're doing it again to wipe out the Uchiha. Impressive. Danzo burst into laughter, loud and unrestrained. So what if I did? You'll all die here. Who's going to expose me? The Uchiha erupted. Bastard. Clan head, give the order. Even if we die taking them with us. We Uchiha aren't cowards, let's go. Fugaku lifted one hand. Quiet. His voice fell like iron. I know what to do. The plaza calmed barely. 600 fists clenched. 600 sets of eyes burned. Then Fugaku stepped forward, his voice low and heavy. Itachi. Let's settle this. Fine. Itachi didn't argue. A surge of chakra rolled off him. His eyes turned crimson. Mangekyo Sharingan. In an instant, a massive red Susanoo skeleton erupted around him, then layered into muscle, armor, and a Tengu-like helm. It stabilized into a terrifying form. A fourth-stage Susanoo, right hand holding the Tatsuka blade, left hand carrying the Yata mirror. Fugaku's eyes narrowed. His own Sharingan shifted, Mangekyo blooming, and he began to pull his Susanoo forth. But, before he could, a blur crossed the plaza. Too fast. A shadow slammed into Itachi's Susanoo. Itachi. Itachi's brows snapped down. He raised the Tatsuka blade instinctively to block. Clang. A clean, sharp impact. Then a violent shockwave exploded outward. The entire Uchiha district shuddered as if the ground itself had been punched. A heartbeat of silence. And then, in full view of everyone, thin fractures spread across Itachi's Susanoo. Crack, crack, crack. Like glass. Like armor turning brittle. Then, boom! Itachi's Susanoo shattered on the spot. Blown apart. Gone. One punch. The plaza froze. 600 Uchiha. Root remnants. Danzo. Obito. Even Fugaku. Everyone stared at the figure who had just arrived like a judgment from the sky. Because only one person fought like that. Only one person made the air itself break. Ren. Chapter 68, a shock that stunned everyone. The instant the red Susanoo shattered, a terrifying shockwave exploded outward. Hairline fractures spread across the plaza, visible even to the naked eye, while a storm of dust surged up like a tidal wave, swallowing everything in a choking haze. Inside the collapsing Susanoo, Uchiha Itachi didn't even have time to react. His body was flung out like a broken doll and slammed into the ground nearby. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood, his Mangekyo Sharingan, bloodshot, trembling, wide with disbelief. How? How could Susanoo just break? Who did that? Was the Susanoo blown apart? No way. That was Susanoo. A few seconds later, the root operatives and the Uchiha shinobi finally snapped back to reality, and their faces turned ashen like they'd seen a ghost. This had to be a joke. Itachi's Susanoo had only just manifested, and it was already destroyed. Impossible. Wait, taijutsu? That presence. I think I... Suddenly, Shimura Danzo, who had been silent, and the masked man hovering in midair both seemed to realize something at the same time. Their expressions changed sharply. Under the pale moonlight, a figure walked out of the dust, slowly, calmly, as if the chaos around him didn't exist. Then, the moment everyone saw his face, Uchiha Fugaku froze. Uchiha Itachi froze. The masked man, Uchiha Obito, went rigid. And every single root operative and Uchiha shinobi on the scene widened their eyes in raw, instinctive terror. This is... Even the figures hiding in the darkness, Black Zetsu and White Zetsu, stared at the man in the plaza as if reality itself had cracked. No. That couldn't be him. It was dead silent. So silent it felt like time itself had stopped in the Uchiha district, leaving only the sound of ragged breathing. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the masked man suppressed the shock in his chest and spoke coldly. Uchiha Ren, very good. Very good. 7 years ago, the man wearing that Whitebeard mask, that was you, wasn't it? And that mysterious voice just now, that was you too. The one who tore the air itself inside the Uchiha district, that was also you. Ren's expression didn't change. He simply nodded. Yes. Everything you said is right. It was all me. A collective inhale rippled through the plaza. This time it wasn't just stunned silence, people were genuinely afraid to breathe too loudly. Shinobi swallowed hard, throats bobbing, eyes shaking. It was all Ren? The shock hit like a hammer. No one had imagined he'd hidden this deeply, so cleanly, so perfectly. Root, especially, had never taken him seriously. Not once. And as for the Uchiha, even on the night of the massacre, most of them hadn't even remembered there was a Uchiha Ren. His presence in the clan had always been too faint. After the Ninetales incident, there were even times Fugaku himself nearly forgot that Ren had once used sheer killing intent to knock the Uchiha hardliners unconscious. And now, Ren had stepped forward and unveiled everything in one move. The reversal was so violent it made people's minds reject it. Ren, meanwhile, looked relaxed. Almost relieved. So good, he murmured, stretching lazily as if he'd just shaken off a long illness. Finally. I don't have to pretend anymore. 10 years. A full 10 years. And in the end the mask still came off. If he'd already revealed himself. Then Konoha was due for a change. The ninja world was due for a change. With that thought, Ren stopped holding back. In the next instant, a terrifying pressure burst from his body. It wasn't Conqueror's Haki. It was something else entirely. Something that belonged to Ren alone, the presence of a true monster. Ever since fully unlocking and fusing the Whitebeard Template, the invisible force of his spirit had grown to a level even Ren couldn't accurately measure anymore. Still, to avoid drawing the immediate attention of Sarutobi Hiruzen and the others, Ren kept it contained, pressing it down only over the Uchiha district. After he finished here, he would give the third Hokage and Konoha itself a very big surprise. The air thickened. It didn't just feel heavy, it felt solid. Under that invisible pressure, Danzo, Itachi, the masked man and Fugaku all felt a crushing weight settle onto their bodies. As for the majority of Root and the Uchiha shinobi, they could barely breathe. Some weaker ones trembled so badly it looked like their bones were rattling, like even their souls were shaking. How strong is he? This is terrifying. What kind of monster is Uchiha Ren? At this moment, Danzo, Itachi, and the masked man had no expression left at all. They stared at Ren in the plaza, as if staring at something that wasn't human, and deep down it felt like they'd swallowed something foul. They had thought they were standing at the top of the tower. But Ren had been hiding for years. And he wasn't on the 10th floor. He was on the 100th. That gap, that suffocating absolute gap. It was impossible to accept. But the truth was right there. And whether they liked it or not, they had no choice but to accept it. Chapter 69, Killing Danzo. Since that's the case. Ren swept his gaze across the plaza, the corner of his mouth lifting into a faint curve. I'll show you a little more, enough to scare you senseless. His mind stirred. In an instant he drew on the chakra of his sage body, and a second wave of terrifying power surged outward. His presence had already been oppressive. Now, with that enormous chakra pressure layered on top of it, the sheer force of him swelled again, rising to an absurd level. And it didn't stop there. Under countless horrified stares, Ren's eyes turned a deeper, violent red. 1 tomo. 2. 3. The pattern sharpened, twisting, until a Mangekyo-shaped design fully formed. A 3-pronged, pinwheel-like Mangekyo pattern, cold, clean, and unervingly beautiful. So much chakra. He has the Mangekyo Sharingan too. Chakra on the level of a tailed beast, Mangekyo Sharingan, and taijutsu that can blow apart a Susanoo. This. The plaza had already gone numb with shock, as if hearts had stiffened and souls had frozen. But even so, mouths still fell open. Eyes nearly popped out of skulls. Was this a joke? How much had Ren been hiding? Insane taijutsu was one thing. But chakra like this? And the Mangekyo on top of it? What was he, human? Impossible. Danzo looked half-stunned. The Uchiha massacre plan had completely slipped out of his control. Wasn't the clan supposed to be wiped out cleanly and quietly? Where did this monster come from? He had assumed Ren was just a taijutsu-focused elite jonin. Instead, the man's taijutsu was inhuman, his chakra was monstrous, and he had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. For a brief, bitter moment, Danzo almost felt like the Uchiha were mocking him. He'd spent years planning the massacre. So why was he the one getting crushed? Why is he this strong? Itachi pushed himself up from the ground. Staring at Ren, who now felt less like a person and more like a god, his expression twisted into a messy mix of disbelief, frustration, and something he refused to name. This level of restraint. The masked man hovering above, Obito, looked equally conflicted. He had thought his own strength was already frightening. But Ren had been hiding deeper. Deep in the shadows, Black Zetsu finally felt a genuine thread of fear crawl up his spine. That's the sage body and the Mangekyo Sharingan. If Ren had truly kept this buried for years, just thinking about it made the hair rise on his neck. This was an extremely dangerous man. Worse, Black Zetsu couldn't understand it. How could a Uchiha awaken a body like this? That level of chakra, he'd only ever sensed it from the Uzumaki and from Senju Hashirama. Black Zetsu, White Zetsu said gravely, merged into him. Our intel was wrong. The real boss of the Uchiha was this Ren. If I'm right, he kept enduring and hiding until he was strong enough, then chose the night of the massacre to reveal himself. We're in trouble. If the situation turns bad, we retreat. Immediately. Black Zetsu's gaze narrowed. He understood the danger too. Ren had been playing the fool, baiting everyone into the net. Fine. White Zetsu, for once, didn't babble. He only muttered, Konoha's about to change. At the same time, while Root operatives stood frozen in terror, the Uchiha shinobi began to snap out of it. We had someone like this in our clan? Ren is insane. At a critical moment, it's our own people we can rely on. Then it hit them, late but hard. Ren was one of them. The stronger he was, the better it was for the Uchiha. This wasn't something to fear. This was something to celebrate. At the very least, the Uchiha wouldn't be exterminated tonight. They might even turn the blade back en route. Fugaku exhaled heavily, as if a boulder had finally rolled off his chest. All night he'd been thinking, if I fall, what happens to our civilians? Our children are wounded? Now, he didn't have to fear that outcome anymore. And without realizing it, Fugaku's thinking straightened, subtly, quietly, like a crooked beam being nudged back into place. Ren's hand had already moved. Kodo Amitsukami, a soft correction, not a full rewrite. Enough to ensure Fugaku wouldn't repeat the original tragedy, standing still while Itachi butchered the clan, even offering his own life without resistance. Then Ren's Mangekyo shifted. His gaze locked onto Danzo. Danzo, Ren said flatly, how do you want to die? I didn't plan to move. But if the Uchiha are about to be wiped out, I have no choice but to step forward. As he spoke, Ren closed his right hand into a fist. A pale, luminous energy surged around his knuckles, condensing violently. Danger. Not ordinary danger, death. Danzo wasn't that old yet. His instincts were still sharp. And the moment he sensed that fist, every cell in his body screamed at him. His soul screamed too. Cold sweat ran down his face. And no, not like this. He bared his teeth, face twisting, and roared a command. All of you go. Stop Uchiha Ren. Then he did something shameless. He turned. And ran. What was there to fight? 7 years ago, Ren had suppressed the Nine Tails. Now he had monstrous chakra, the Mangekyo. And Danzo didn't even know how deep that abyss went. What Danzo didn't know was that Ren's eyes weren't just Mangekyo. They were the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Humph, once I get back, I'll bring reinforcements. As he fled, Danzo's mind raced with malice. He would report everything to Sarutobi Hiruzen and the elders, gather Konoha's full strength, and suppress the Uchiha, suppress Ren. Move, we all go together. Kill him. Because of the root tongue seal, the operatives had no choice. They charged, hardening their hearts. In an instant, more than 300 chakra signatures flared. A dense flood of jutsu, fire, wind, blades, needles, shadows, everything, erupted at once, swarming Ren like a storm. Ren's eyes flashed. He didn't waste a single word. He stepped forward. Remor tremor. A white halo detonated outward. The space ahead of him seemed to twist and roar as the world itself shuddered, an annihilating shock force surging forward like a wall. The air burst. Then, the tremor wave hit the incoming jutsu head-on and smashed them apart, violently, brutally, blowing them into fragmented light and smoke with one deafening chain of explosions. Not good. Root operatives' faces changed at once. Some tried to dodge the lingering shockwaves. Some tried to throw up defensive jutsu. Too late. At his peak, Whitebeard was a monster of the sea. Ren wasn't even fully unleashed. And it was still far beyond what they could endure. Boom! Boom! In the blink of an eye, the tremor force slammed into the 300-plus root operatives. Bodies locked up mid-step. Faces froze in terror. They could only watch, helpless, as the shock tore through them. 1 second later. Crack! Crack, crack, crack. Their bodies split from the inside, bursting in a chain of ruptures. And then they exploded into blood and fragments, wiped out by raw vibration. Chapter 70, Danzo's Death and What Hiruzen Felt. Silence. The entire plaza went dead quiet. For a moment, it felt like time and space had been forced into stillness. Obito, masked and hovering, Itachi and Fugaku all stood frozen, their expressions locked in place as they stared at the aftermath. Ren had already radiated strong. But no one expected this. He didn't act, and then the instant he did, it was catastrophic. He hadn't just shattered over 300 root jutsu. He'd shattered the bodies of over 300 root operatives right along with them. That kind of destructive power couldn't be described with words like terrifying anymore. It belonged in the category of absurd. Root how? The Uchiha shinobi on the plaza looked as if their minds had blanked out. Mouths opened but no sound came. Watching 300 elite root operatives, Konoha's hand-picked killers, get wiped out in an instant. The visual impact was simply too violent to process. Root wasn't a mob. Anyone who made it into Root was personally selected by Danzo, hardened, trained, sharpened. And yet, in front of Ren, they were nothing. That doesn't look like a Kekii Genkai, White Zetsu muttered from the shadows. Black Zetsu didn't answer immediately. His mind was unsettled again. Every time Ren moved, it was a power they hadn't catalogued, a method they hadn't seen. As if they were the ones who'd lived underground their whole lives. Meanwhile, Danzo, repeatedly using body flicker to escape the compound, heard the thunderous booms behind him and couldn't help glancing back. What he saw made his scalp go cold. A pale white wave of power surged, and 300 Root operatives were crushed and burst apart like brittle glass. Thank God I ran. His face twisted. Too terrifying. Keep running. Chakra surged again. Another body flicker. Danzo fled like a stray dog. When he finally reached the gate of the Uchiha district, relief flashed in his eyes. Finally he was getting out. He instinctively looked back once more. And in that instant his pupils shrank. His soul practically left his body. Because somehow, Ren was already behind him. Standing there casually. Watching him with a faint amused look. Like he was looking at a dead man. Running? Ren shrugged, voice calm. Since you came all this way, stay. To be fair, Danzo was bottom tier among Kage-level fighters. That was exactly why he'd obsessed over stealing Sharingan, why he'd done everything he could to patch his weakness with stolen eyes. But he'd run into Ren. A monster who'd been signing in and accumulating strength for 10 years, then stepped into the world at the worst possible moment for everyone else. Danzo's expression flickered. He tried to form seals. He didn't even finish the hand sign. A scream tore out of him. Ren's blade, Murakumajiri, flashed. Danzo's bandaged right arm was severed cleanly and dropped to the ground. Blood sprayed wildly. Ren glanced at the severed limb and shook his head. Hashirama's cells, huh? Too bad. You'll never get the chance to install Sharingan into it. He lifted his eyes to Danzo, voice flat. The moment you stepped into Uchiha territory, your fate was decided. And no, Uchiha Ren, you can't kill me. Danzo clutched the stump, ignoring the blood pouring through his fingers. His face contorted as he tried to force authority into his voice. You're strong, but do you even understand the will of fire? Everything I did was for Konoha's peace. I know, Ren said, nodding once. Then he smiled, sharp and cold. From now on, Konoha will bear the name Uchiha. The duty of maintaining peace can be carried by our clan. He leaned forward slightly. You understand what that means? Danzo went rigid. Konoha will be Uchiha's? Then, that meant the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen. A chill punched through Danzo's spine. If the Uchiha took Konoha and ruled it outright. If Hiruzen's political block was overturned. Then everything he'd done, everything he'd sacrificed, everything he'd dirted his hands for. It would all become a joke. No, I have to get to the Hokage's office. Danzo's lips trembled as he muttered to himself, half delirious. I can't die. I can't die. I still have to become Hokage. I still have to. You wanna live, Ren said quietly, so you decide other people should die. He sighed, no anger in it, only finality. Then he raised Murakumajiri. A single clean motion. Blade down. SHHK. Blood sprayed. A thin, visible line appeared across Danzo's throat. I don't want to die. His body locked stiff. His eyes stayed wide, furious, unwilling, desperate, as life bled out of him. His expression froze on his face like a mask. He couldn't understand it. He came to execute the Uchiha massacre. So how did he end up dying here? The cruelest part? He spent his whole life hunting the Uchiha. And in the end he died by a Uchiha blade. A neat circle. A clean repayment. Hokage office, same night. Even though it was deep into the night, the Hokage's office was strangely lively. Hamura Mitokado, Koharu Udatane, and Sarutobi Hiruzen. None of them looked tired. If anything, there was a faint edge of anticipation in the air, like they were waiting for good news. Hiruzen was smoking as usual. Then, cough. He suddenly choked mid-draw. His eyes narrowed. What is it? Koharu chuckled, old eyes creasing. Hiruzen, don't tell me you're finally feeling your age. Hamura laughed too. Too tired, old man? It's nothing, Hiruzen said, frowning as he slowly lowered his pipe. He picked up his tea, took a sip, and let the warmth settle his throat. But the uneasy feeling didn't go away. Just now, he'd felt a flicker of something. A bad omen. Could something have gone wrong at the Uchiha district? He shook his head and let out a self-mocking smile. No. He was overthinking it. This time, the Uchiha extermination plan was airtight. How could anything possibly go wrong? Still, if not for the barrier, he would have been tempted to use the telescope technique and watch the whole thing unfold. Chapter 71. Stop pretending. You're still the dead last. Uchiha District. When Ren returned to the plaza carrying Shimura Danzo's head, the entire crowd froze. The corpse-stiff terror on Danzo's face, those eyes still wide, still refusing to close, sent a chill straight through everyone's spine. For a heartbeat, minds went blank again, ringing with nothing but shock. Impossible. He was dead. The leader of Konoha's Root, one of the village's top figures, was just dead? To be honest, Root wasn't weak. Danzo wasn't weak either. This operation had been Root at near full power. Under normal circumstances, wiping out the Uchiha would have been disturbingly easy. And yet, they'd run into Ren, a hidden boss so deep in the shadows that Root didn't even get the chance to claw back with a last resort. Not even the suicidal sealing technique, reverse 4 symbol sealing, had been cast. That alone told you how complete their despair had been. Time crawled. 1 second. 3. 10. Then, after a full minute, Ren casually tossed Danzo's head aside. Thud. That dull impact finally snapped the Uchiha shinobi back to life. Root got wiped out. Danzo got beheaded. Ren, he's insane. From today on, Ren is a god to the Uchiha. I'm training taijutsu from now on, no excuses. The plaza erupted. The clan's shinobi could no longer suppress their joy, voices bursting out in raw, cathartic cries. Almost every Uchiha stared at Ren with a kind of worshipful, fever-bright excitement. He might really be the Uchiha's god. Fugaka drew a deep breath. For the first time in what felt like forever, something bold and heroic surged through his chest. From this day forward, he murmured, eyes shining. The Uchiha finally stand up again, like we did in the Age of War. Not far away, Itachi had already retreated dozens of meters. And now he couldn't keep his composure anymore. Fear and disbelief twisted his features so hard even the lines at the corners of his mouth looked warped. Danzo was dead. Root was gone. The Uchiha massacre plan had essentially collapsed, thanks to Ren, who had wiped out Danzo and Root before they could finish the job. What was this? How did it come to this? The Uchiha were supposed to be finished. Their fate was supposed to be sealed. And yet Ren, this shameless fox who'd hidden for years, had suddenly thrown off his mask and forced a continuation onto a clan that should have died tonight. It made Itachi feel sick. He had accepted the massacre order to protect Konoha and uphold the so-called will of fire. He had planned to spare Sasuke and carve hatred into him, so Sasuke would grow, chase him, and one day kill him. Now, everything was ruined. With Danzo dead, Konoha's internal collapse was basically guaranteed. And Itachi? He was trapped in the middle. Too traitorous for the clan. Too compromised for the village. The Uchiha looking at him now didn't see a brother or a prodigy. They looked at him like prey. Like they wanted to tear him apart. On the other side, the masked man, Obito, no longer knew what to feel. Ren's strength had reached a level that didn't make sense. Elite Jonin, taijutsu specialist? That might have been the funniest joke Obito had ever heard in his life. Ren lifted the corner of his mouth slightly. Then he looked at Obito and Itachi with detached indifference. Enough celebrating. Danzo and Root have been erased. Once I deal with you two Uchiha traitors, Konoha will enter a new chapter. Then he deliberately glanced at the masked man, emphasizing every syllable. Right, isn't that so, dead last Uchiha Obito? The plaza exploded again. Uchiha Obito? That's not possible, Obito's dead. He gave one of his Sharingan to Kakashi. The man in the spiral mask is Obito? In an instant, the Uchiha were thrown into chaos. So it wasn't only Itachi. There was another Uchiha helping slaughter their own clan. Another traitor. Obito's face stiffened beneath the mask. Outwardly, he stayed calm. But inside, a storm rose. He didn't even have time to wonder how Ren knew. He forced his voice colder. My name is Uchiha Madara. Ren shook his head, unimpressed. Stop pretending. You're Uchiha Obito. That dead last stench on you, Ren's smile sharpened. I'd recognize it for the rest of my life. Obito's chest jolted like he'd been punched. Dead last stench? What kind of insult is that? He wasn't the same boy from back then. How could he still have a dead last aura? It was ridiculous. But one glance at Ren's strength and Obito forced himself to breathe. He crushed down the tremor in his heart and spoke with icy restraint. Uchiha Obito died a long time ago. Oh. Ren chuckled softly. He lifted the weapon in his hand, Murakumajiri, and didn't bother saying anything else. The meaning was clear. A fight was coming. Sensing the killing intent rising from Ren like a blade, Obito and Itachi exchanged a look across the distance. Then, at the same time, they shifted into battle stance. Get ready, Obito said. And the air tightened. Chapter 72, Itachi and Obito's Despair. As Itachi and the masked man, Obito, shifted into a battle stance, the entire Uchiha district seemed to sink under a crushing weight. The air grew heavier by the second, thick enough to suffocate. But just as that pressure was about to crush everyone's nerves, Ren seemed to remember something. He glanced at Fugaku and spoke evenly. Have everyone fall back. I don't want the clan caught in the crossfire. Understood. Fugaku's expression flickered once, then he raised a hand. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Uchiha shinobi retreated in an orderly wave, pulling away from the plaza. Now, Itachi had been waiting for exactly this. His body flashed, and he appeared directly in front of Ren. The Mangekyo Sharingan spun, erupting with terrifying ocular power. Amaterasu. His voice was ice. His right eye tightened, focus snapping onto Ren. Ren frowned slightly. A sweep of observation haki told him what was coming, and he didn't bother dodging. Instead, he tightened his grip on Murakumajiri. Hiss. Tremor power surged. Armament Haki surged with it. A pale white halo, laced with hardened black, wrapped around the blade's edge. Then Ren casually swung at the air. The next instant, the air cracked with sharp, snapping fractures. In Itachi's disbelieving stare, the black flames of Amaterasu had barely ignited before a white cutting wave slammed into them and blew them apart, shredding the inferno into scattered fragments that splashed across the ground and began burning in isolated patches. How? Itachi's expression changed sharply. If Amaterasu, the so-called strongest physical attack, couldn't do it, then he'd switch. His left eye's power surged. Tsukuyomi. Blood began to spill from Itachi's eyes under the strain, but something twisted and sharp curled at the corner of his mouth. Because the genjutsu had landed. In that instant, the world around Ren turned unreal, hollow, unstable, until reality collapsed into a desolate space of only red and black. Ren's eyes swept the void. So this is Tsukuyomi, he said flatly. The world where you control time itself. He looked up at Itachi hovering above. It's weak. Itachi's expression hardened. Weak, he repeated coldly. In Tsukuyomi, everything, time, location, mass, everything is under my control. As he spoke, Itachi raised a hand and slowly clenched his fingers. A massive cross appeared out of nothing. Chains erupted and coiled around Ren's body, winding tighter, dragging him toward the cross like a sentence being carried out. Ren watched it all with faint amusement. If this were the past, he said, I might have endured it. But now? His smile sharpened, meaning layered beneath it. Do you know what it means to possess a presence that stands above everything, a will that can rule? Before the last word even fully fell, a king-like aura poured from Ren's body. No warning. No build-up. Just absolute dominance, as if the entire shinobi world should kneel. Crack, crack, crack. Itachi's Tsukuyomi space began to fracture. Thin lines split across the red and black sky like broken glass spreading spiderwebs. Then, with a sound like reality being torn apart, the Tsukuyomi world exploded, blown apart by sheer presence. Reality. Itachi screamed. Blood poured from his left eye. But he didn't even look down at it. He stared at Ren like he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. Presence? Tsukuyomi, broken by presence? Was this a joke? Without him realizing it, despair flooded his chest, thick, heavy, unstoppable. Not because Itachi was weak. Because the opponent was too strong. You've lost, Ren said, stepping forward calmly. When your body reaches a certain level, your spirit undergoes a transformation. Genjutsu stops having meaning. Don't get arrogant. Obito gritted out. He finally moved. His body flickered behind Ren, and his right hand clamped down on Ren's shoulder like a vice. Kamui. Hum. A terrifying pull erupted. Space twisted into a spiral around them, warping into a vortex that tried to swallow both men whole. Obito was trying to drag Ren into the Kamui dimension. Uchiha Ren, Obito hissed, madness flickering behind the mask. Go rot in my space. Ren turned his head slightly, smiling wide, as if he'd been gifted a joke. You're the first shinobi who's dared to get this close. Then he bared his teeth. Do you know what real power looks like? The kind that can destroy a world? Enough talk. Obito snarled. You really should die. Ren's eyes went cold. He clenched his fist. And punched straight into the twisting vortex. Tremor power. Top-tier Armament Haki. Sage body chakra. All three fused into one blow. Crack. The sound wasn't air breaking. It was space. The spiraling distortion itself let out a fracture scream. Obito's mind went blank with disbelief. He'd never imagined Ren would do something this insane. Punch the Kamui distortion head-on, trying to break the warp itself. And Obito understood, better than anyone, what space tearing apart could mean. Fear punched through him. No. Ren inhaled once, then drove more power into the punch. In full view of everyone. A vast tremor force detonated outward. The spiraling distortion centered on the two of them collapsed. And then burst, unleashing a shockwave that looked like it wanted to erase everything in its path. Madman? You're a madman. Obito panicked. Kamui intangibility. He forced his body into phasing to avoid the space burst impact. Only then did he truly understand what Ren meant by world-destroying power. Ren's lips curved. I was waiting for you to phase. His entire body snapped under black hard Armament Haki, coating him like armor. He took the space burst shock head-on, and in the same breath, threw a punch straight into Obito's chest. Because Obito was intangible, the fist passed through him. The shockwave passed through him too. No damage. Obito's Mangekyo gleamed cold behind the mask. It's useless, he said. While I'm phased. I'm invincible. Then I'll beat you out of it, Ren replied calmly. I'll attack you without pause for 5 minutes. Let's see if that's enough. Obito's head rang like a bell. His blood ran cold. He knew the weakness. One eye. Intangibility had a time limit. Continuous pressure could force the timing window open. And with his Mangekyo already heavily drained, even with Hashirama cells supporting him, he might not last 5 minutes. Hell. Maybe not even 3. Ren didn't give him a second. In the span of a heartbeat, Ren's fists became a blur, dozens, then countless strikes, passing through Obito's intangible body and detonating the air behind him. Each miss still cracked the atmosphere and kicked up brutal shockwaves, hammering the battlefield like artillery. From far away, the retreating Uchiha could only stare. This is insane. Itachi and that masked man are getting completely bullied. Ren, he's like a human-shaped monster. Itachi, meanwhile, collapsed to the ground. His Mangekyo faded back to a normal Sharingan as his chakra and spirit bottomed out. It's over. He sounded empty. On the battlefield, Ren's relentless assault continued. Second after second, Obito's heart pounded harder, panic creeping in. He'd never felt this suffocated. He'd dug the hole himself. And he knew exactly what waited the moment his intangibility ended. No, time's up. Obito's expression snapped. The phasing state dropped. His body turned solid. And at that exact instant, Ren's observation Haki caught it. His fist tightened. He struck. You! Obito's eyes flashed with pure horror beneath the mask. His mouth opened as if to speak, but there was no time. Boom! A crisp, brutal impact. Obito's body was blown apart in one punch, bursting into blood mist that drifted through the plaza. Explode. In that same instant, hidden in the darkness, Black Zetsu and White Zetsu finally couldn't sit still anymore. They triggered the explosive tags Root had buried throughout the Uchiha district long ago. A chain of deafening explosions erupted. The shockwaves turned the compound into chaos, ground shaking, buildings buckling, fire blooming. Damn it! Put out the fires. They planted that many explosive tags? That's disgusting. The Uchiha, still reeling from the sight of Ren punching Obito apart, snapped back to reality and scattered to deal with the destruction. Fugaku didn't even need to give orders. In the confusion, no one noticed when Itachi vanished from the plaza. Ren watched the burning compound, eyes calm, expression faintly mocking. Izanagi. Black Zetsu. Obito. Itachi. He seemed unsurprised. With top-tier observation haki, most things couldn't hide from him. He'd sensed the explosive tags long ago. He'd sensed black and white Zetsu lurking in the shadows. And he'd sensed the truth behind Itachi's disappearance. Itachi hadn't escaped on his own. He'd been taken. But Ren didn't move to chase. Not now. Not worth the time. He had other business. Because right now, the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was still sitting in his office, waiting for news that the Uchiha had been wiped out. Well, since the Uchiha weren't dead, why not wipe out the Sarutobi faction before dawn? Then when the sun came up, the real show could begin. Chapter 73, The Uchiha Strike Back, wiping out the Sarutobi clan's shinobi. Outside the Uchiha district, beside the large Genjutsu barrier. Hearing the thunderous explosions echoing from within, more than a dozen ANBU exchanged looks inside. With that many explosive tags going off, looks like Root is doing the final cleanup. The Uchiha, the first clan of Konoha, is about to disappear. After tomorrow, there won't be any such thing as the Uchiha clan in the ninja world. They'll become history. One ANBU squad leader seemed to remember something. He signaled to the others, then flickered away into the night. I'll report to the third Hokage. After he left, another ANBU leader spoke coldly, face unreadable. Keep guarding the perimeter. No Uchiha shinobi, no civilians are allowed to get out. Understood. Hokage office. Hiruzen, Koharu Udatane said, impatience creeping into her voice. Has ANBU sent any news yet? It's been long enough, she added, frowning. By now the Uchiha should be wiped out. Hamura Mitokado stretched, visibly exhausted, and clicked his tongue. Exactly. Danzo promised the elders he'd finish within 5 hours. And look at us, dawn's almost here and we still haven't heard a thing. Hiruzen's brow was tightly knit, but he kept his tone measured. Wait a little longer. The Uchiha are Konoha's largest clan. If it takes more time, that's normal. Koharu and Hamura exchanged glances. After a moment, they didn't press it. Then, knock. Knock. The door opened sharply. An ANBU rushed in, dropping to one knee. Third Hokage, latest report. Speak, Hiruzen said at once, satisfaction flickering across his face as he set down his pipe. The Uchiha district suffered a massive explosion. It should be Root finishing the cleanup, the ANBU reported, voice firm. Good. Excellent. Before Hiruzen could even respond, Koharu and Hamura popped up from their seats, the fatigue of staying up all night instantly wiped from their faces. You may go, Hiruzen said, waving the ANBU away. Then he took a deep, satisfied pull from his pipe, his mood rising like a tide. There was nothing more comforting than that report. If Root was cleaning up, it meant the Uchiha extermination plan had succeeded perfectly. When the sun rose, it would be time for the Hokage to perform. He would publicly declare Uchiha Itachi the criminal. He would dissolve Root as a gesture to calm the other clans. And he would present it all as the village's necessary sacrifice, his painful duty as Hokage. Everything would be under control. Outside Konoha, underground cavern. In a damp, cold tunnel beyond the village. A spiral of distorted space rippled open, and Obito stumbled out, collapsing hard onto the ground. Damn it. Why did it turn out like this? His face beneath the mask was vicious, contorted beyond recognition. This plan had been his choice. He'd inserted himself into it willingly. And the result? Not only had the plan failed, he'd nearly lost his life in Konoha. Obito yanked off the spiral mask and stared at his eye. The Sharingan he'd implanted, his ordinary one, was now permanently blind. Yes. At the last moment he'd used the Uchiha forbidden technique. Izanagi. That Uchiha Ren he hid too deep, Obito spat, voice hoarse. Konoha's about to change. Black Zetsu and White Zetsu surfaced from the ground beside him, merged together, both unnervingly quiet. Their expressions were heavy. Even they were shaken by Ren's strength. Damn it! Obito roared, fists clenched so hard they shook. He'd been taught a lesson tonight, one he would never forget. And he swore to himself. One day he would grasp the ultimate power of the shinobi world, crush everything beneath him, and build a perfect world, one without war, one with eternal peace. Then White Zetsu blinked as if remembering something. Right, what about Itachi? Implant Hashirama cells into him, Obito said coldly, without hesitation. Got it, White Zetsu nodded. Black Zetsu said nothing. Because Ren's sudden reveal, his power, his timing, had already pushed everything outside Black Zetsu's control. Uchiha District, after the explosions. Back in the Uchiha District, after the fires and damage were handled. The clan's shinobi gathered again in the plaza. The ground was ripped into trenches and scars, the square half destroyed. And yet their eyes were bright, excited, blazing with life. Ren, thank God you were here. Ren, can you teach me taijutsu? If not for you, we really would have been exterminated. This village. Konoha, we don't need it anymore. One after another, the Uchiha spoke with raw gratitude and heated admiration, all facing the man standing at the center. Ren let the voices die down, then swept his eyes across them. Konoha's leadership tried to wipe out the Uchiha. Are you willing to swallow that? Of course not. We've bled for this village, what right do they have to exterminate us? Danzo led Root openly. That means the higher-ups approved it. So what can we do? Then we go down fighting, a hot-blooded Uchiha snarled. If we're going to die, we'll drag them with us. Some looked helpless, rage trapped behind reality. Others, especially the hardliners, were practically foaming, ready to storm the Hokage's office and use Hiruzen's head as a chamber pot. Good. Rin inhaled slowly. A faint wave of Conqueror's haki rolled out, light controlled, but enough to make every Uchiha's heart tighten. The plaza fell silent instantly. I didn't want to act, Rin said, tone almost casual. But Konoha made their choice. If they insist on exterminating us, then I'll make them pay. His gaze sharpened. To solve the problem, to teach Konoha's leadership a lesson. Before dawn breaks, we'll wipe out every shinobi in the Sarutobi clan. Dead silence. The words landed like a blade through the chest. Kill all Sarutobi clan shinobi? Even Fugaku's body jolted. The shock rolled through the crowd like thunder. The Sarutobi were one of Konoha's major clans, founding-era veterans. After Hiruzen took power, their status only rose higher. And after the Uchiha were pushed to the village edge, the Sarutobi had swallowed a huge portion of territory and resources that used to belong to the Uchiha. Now Rin was saying, they would repay blood with blood. Why? Rin asked coldly, watching them. You're afraid? Afraid? Someone snapped back. Why would we be afraid? Ren, tell us what to do. If we hit the Sarutobi, we're openly at war with Konoha's leadership, another Uchiha said, teeth bared. But I'll still say it, why can they exterminate us and we can't kill them? Then we do it, a third growled. We slaughter the Sarutobi and be done with it. The anger that had been trapped in their chests finally erupted. Rin nodded once, decisive. Jonin and Elite Jonin who specialize in stealth, come with me. Everyone else stays here and recovers. He didn't hesitate. After tonight, after Danzo's death, there was no reconciliation left to chase. If Konoha's leadership was the enemy, then there was no reason to show mercy. First, wipe out the Sarutobi shinobi. Warm up. Fugaku clenched his fist, breathing hard. So it begins. He understood it clearly now. From the moment Rin stepped forward, the clan's fate had tied itself to his. Sarutobi District, late night. The Sarutobi were an old clan, one of the village's founding-era lineages. And after Hiruzen became Hokage, their prestige only grew year by year. In the dead of night, most of the Sarutobi district was asleep. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than 20 figures cut through the air. After quietly removing the outer sentries, Ren and more than 20 Uchiha slipped into a small courtyard deep inside the district. Then, without warning, a terrifying pressure surged outward under Ren's control. It spread across the Sarutobi district like an invisible tide. This was Conqueror's haki. And at Ren's current level, he could control it with precision. He didn't unleash it fully. He didn't want to alert the entire village. He only blanketed the Sarutobi district. Boom! In an instant, countless Sarutobi shinobi, still asleep, were knocked unconscious where they lay. Even some jonin woke just long enough to feel their brains ring. Then collapsed into darkness. Only a handful of elite jonin managed to resist long enough to sense that something was wrong. Their faces turned pale, minds scrambling. Who would dare attack the Sarutobi district? But after barely a minute, Ren's attention found them too. Their eyes rolled back. They fell. Move, Ren said quietly. Fast and clean. He was the first to vanish. And after that, it was simple. With the Sarutobi shinobi unconscious, the Uchiha became executioners. Blades fell like harvest sickles. Clean. Efficient. Brutal. Dawn, Uchiha district barrier lifted. At daybreak, just as the sky began to lighten, ANBU dismantled the Genjutsu barrier around the Uchiha district. Curiosity got the better of a few of them, and they went inside to check. What they found was strange. There were clear signs of battle and explosions. The air reeked of blood. But there weren't any bodies. Not a single corpse. At first, the ANBU assumed Root had cleaned the scene. So they went to Root for details. After all, the third Hokage and the elders hadn't slept all night, waiting for the good news. But the moment they tried to find Root, they discovered something far more unsettling. Shimura Danzo and the Root operatives assigned to the Uchiha extermination plan hadn't returned. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. Chapter 74, The Terror of Konoha's High Command. Konoha. Hokage Tower, Central District. What's going on with Danzo? Koharu Udatane slammed her palm down on the desk, her wrinkled face turning icy. A sure-win extermination operation, don't tell me it's still not finished. It's already daylight, she snapped. Why hasn't he returned? Hamura Midokado's expression was just as ugly. If I'd known it would drag on like this, we should have gone home and slept. He narrowed his eyes, voice cold. This time, Danzo owes the elders an explanation. This doesn't just blow over. I already had ANBU go to press him, Hiruzen said, stretching as if he were merely tired, though there was something pointed in his tone. After wiping out the Uchiha, Danzo's probably busy collecting Sharingan. As he said it, irritation flashed through Sarutobi Hiruzen's eyes. As Hokage, he knew plenty of things he pretended not to see, including one particularly unpleasant truth. Danzo had been secretly entangled with Orochimaru for a long time. Let's hope that's all it is, Hamura muttered. Koharu and Hamura exchanged a look, then sat back down, both deeply annoyed. Not once, not even for a moment, did any of them consider the possibility that the Uchiha extermination plan had failed. And they certainly didn't consider the possibility that Danzo was already dead. In their minds, the Uchiha massacre succeeding was as certain as sunrise. Then, the office doors burst open. An ANBU shinobi rushed in, face pale with disbelief. Third Hokage, something happened. Hiruzen frowned, his pipe still between his fingers. He assumed Danzo was causing problems again, refusing to report in, playing games. His expression darkened immediately. What is it? The ANBU swallowed. Danzo, Uchiha Itachi, Root's elite operatives, and the Uchiha clan members. He looked like he couldn't believe the words he was saying. They've all vanished. Vanished? Hiruzen stared at him. For a moment, he genuinely didn't understand. Danzo went to carry out the extermination. So how did he vanish together with the Uchiha? What was Danzo doing? Hamura's face changed sharply. Could Danzo have stolen the Uchiha's wealth and fled Konoha? The words were ridiculous. And yet the room went cold. Koharu's expression also shifted, unease crawling up her spine. If Danzo had really taken a fortune and a huge number of Sharingan and disappeared, then that meant they'd all been played. Then, another voice, frantic, crashed into the office. Third Hokage. Something terrible happened to the Sarutobi clan. A young Sarutobi genin stumbled in, clutching a black box with both hands, almost crawling from panic. Hiruzen's heart sank. That ominous feeling he'd dismissed last night returned like a blade. What happened? He demanded. What happened to the Sarutobi clan? The genin was shaking so hard his teeth clicked, cold sweat pouring down his face. Dead, they're all dead. What do you mean dead? Hiruzen barked, fury exploding in his voice. The genin flinched like he'd been struck, but forced himself to speak. All the Sarutobi clan's shinobi are dead. Bang! Hiruzen slammed the desk so hard the office rattled. What did you say? The genin collapsed to the floor, terrified out of his mind, but still managed to stammer through the details. Last night, every Sarutobi clan shinobi had been killed. No signs of a fight. No chaos. Just clean execution cuts, one strike, one kill. Clang. Hiruzen's body locked up. The pipe slipped from his fingers and hit the floor. He didn't even notice. Cold sweat had already beaded across his forehead. Koharu's face went bloodless. Hamura stared like his mind had stopped functioning. Impossible. The Sarutobi shinobi wiped out? This wasn't just an attack. In Konoha, who dared touch the Sarutobi clan, especially to this degree? Killing all their shinobi was practically the same as declaring war on the Hokage's faction itself. Hiruzen felt the world spin. His ears rang. His mind turned into a blank, buzzing void. He couldn't understand it. Who could erase an entire clan's shinobi in one night without a single battle? And worse, last night was supposed to be the Uchiha extermination. So why was the Sarutobi clan the one bleeding? Investigate, Hiruzen snarled at last, voice rough with rage. Investigate with everything you have. ANBU mobilizes at full force. I want to know who did this. The Sarutobi genin, still trembling, lifted the black box with both hands like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Third Hokage. This was found in our clan district. Hiruzen was already boiling. He didn't even look. He grabbed the box and hurled it across the room. The black case hit the wall with a heavy crash. Crack. It sprang open from the impact. Something dropped out. And the moment Hiruzen saw what it was, his expression froze solid. Koharu went white as death. Hamura went completely blank. Chapter 75, Sarutobi, the clown was us all along. Silence. Absolute silence. The entire office became so quiet it felt like sound itself had been erased. Crack. A teacup slipped from Koharu Udatane's hands and shattered on the floor. For someone of her status, one of Konoha's top elders, to drop a cup from sheer shock. It was the definition of losing control. But at this moment, no one even looked at her. The ANBU messenger. The Sarutobi genin. Hiruzen. Hamura. All of them were in the same state. Stunned, stiff, and visibly shaken. Damn it. After what felt like forever, Sarutobi Hiruzen finally sank back into his chair, his face pale with disbelief. He swore to himself. He'd never taken this much psychological damage in a single day. The Sarutobi clan's shinobi being wiped out meant the Sarutobi had effectively suffered social death inside Konoha. And now even Shimura Danzo was dead. Another pillar gone from Hiruzen's side. Koharu finally seemed to recover enough to make a strangled sound, half scream, half gasp, before she slumped into her chair, trembling. How is this possible? Hamura Midokado stomped the floor as if he'd lost his mind. His face twisted. He clutched his head with both hands and shook, hard enough to look unhinged. Because the truth was undeniable. Inside that box was Shimura Danzo's head. Blood had smeared it. The features were ugly, half obscured. But Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura had known Danzo for decades. They recognized him at a glance. And from the twisted expression and the unwilling eyes, it was obvious. Danzo had died full of rage and regret. Why did this happen? Hiruzen stared at the head, pain twisting through his chest. Then the rest crashed into him again. The Uchiha vanishing. The Sarutobi shinobi slaughtered overnight. His skin went cold. Danzo dead? Koharu whispered, voice breaking. How could he die? Why? Hamura breathed harshly. Does the Uchiha clan still have some hidden method? They forced themselves to inhale, trying to crush down the fear. But it wouldn't flatten. Because yesterday was supposed to be a celebration day. They'd stayed awake all night, excited, waiting to hear that the Uchiha were gone forever. Instead, they'd been struck by a thunderbolt. And the more they connected the dots, the more terrifying it became. Uchiha vanished. Sarutobi Shinobi killed. Danzo dead. If you thought about it carefully, maybe the clown wasn't the Uchiha. Maybe the clown was Konoha's high command. Them. Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura exchanged a look. In each other's eyes they saw the same thing. Fear. Then Hiruzen suddenly clenched his fists and barked an order. You two. Get out. Why yes, third Hokage. The ANBU and the Sarutobi Genin looked like they'd been granted a pardon. They scrambled out of the office, practically tripping over themselves in relief. They weren't idiots. Something huge had happened to Konoha. And staying in the room while Konoha's top elders radiated pure fury? That was a good way to die without anyone lifting a finger. Once the door closed, Hiruzen's face hardened into a snarl. Damn it. We were played. Who's calculating behind our backs? The Sarutobi clan's shinobi being wiped out. This is a slap across my face. For years no one had humiliated them like this. Kill Danzo? Wipe out the Sarutobi shinobi? What was the message? Was someone testing how much Konoha's leadership could endure before snapping? Now what? Koharu hissed. The Uchiha extermination plan has clearly failed, Hamura said, jaw tight. We have to find the mastermind. After venting, the three stared at each other again. Killing intent filled the room. They weren't used to being cornered. Worse, they didn't even know who had moved the blade. All they could do was rage in place. After a long silence, Koharu's eyes flickered. Could it be the Uchiha? Her voice grew sharper as she spoke, as if forcing reality into a shape she could accept. That cursed clan. They killed Danzo and Root's elites, then turned around and slaughtered the Sarutobi shinobi, and finally fled Konoha overnight. No, Hiruzen cut in immediately, voice cold. Impossible. You're joking. We know the Uchiha's strength, he said sharply. If they had that kind of hidden power, the extermination plan would never have been approved in the first place. If they had a backup plan, why would they endure for so many years? Hamura nodded grimly, adding the final nail. We've been suppressing and isolating the Uchiha for years. They've never dared to resist. Koharu fell silent. The office sank into another dead quiet. And in that quiet, all three of them felt it. A vague, growing sense of doom. As if an enormous net had already been cast over Konoha, and the village was only now noticing the threads. Then, bang, the office door opened again. An ANBU shinobi rushed in, breathless. Third Hokage, Uchiha Fugaku, the Uchiha clan head, and elite jonin Uchiha Ren have arrived. What? Fugaku? He dares show his face? Hamura's eyes widened. That's walking into a trap. Koharu's lips curled. Good. Very good. And Hiruzen, who had been grim and aching inside, suddenly looked like he'd been thrown a lifeline. His eyes lit up. Heaven had a road and he wouldn't take it. Hell had no gate and he came straight in. Chapter 76, Checking in at the Hokage's office. A few minutes later, under ANBU escort, Fugaku and Rin stepped into the Hokage's office. The moment they crossed the threshold, 3 invisible waves of killing intent brushed past like blades, then vanished. They're really holding it in, huh? Rin thought, suppressing a laugh. His face remained blank as he walked in. Last night, after wiping out the Sarutobi clan's shinobi, the Uchiha had moved overnight, abandoning their district and regrouping in a large underground chamber beneath the Naka shrine. As for how they slipped past ANBU surveillance. Simple. Sharingan Genjutsu. ANBU never even realized what had truly happened in the Uchiha district. Clan head Fugaku, Sarutobi Hiruzen said, his pupils tightening for the briefest instant before he forced a gentle smile. You're here. He didn't spare Rin so much as a glance. Fugaku's expression stayed calm, but his eyes were cold. The instant he entered, Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura had stared at him as if they wanted to tear him apart. Hiruzen picked up his pipe and spoke as if making casual conversation. Was the Uchiha clan all right last night? There was trouble, Fugaku answered immediately, face full of alarm. Hiruzen's eyebrows twitched. His grip on the pipe tightened. Koharu and Hamura exchanged a glance and, without making a sound, each slid a kunai into their hand. What kind of trouble? Hiruzen asked, voice even. Then Fugaku laughed. Relax. I'm joking. There was no trouble at all. The Uchiha had a wonderful night. Hiruzen froze for half a beat, then nodded with a stiff smile. I see. Good. That's good. Koharu and Hamura looked like their faces had been punched into stone. Their knuckles whitened around the kunai. If Hiruzen hadn't told them to hold, they would have already ordered Anbu to seize Fugaku and interrogate him on the spot. Ren watched the scene quietly. They're all born politicians, he thought. They know he's lying. They're furious. They're waiting for the moment the mask drops. And yet no one was the first to tear it off. Maybe that was why Hiruzen, longest reigning Hokage professor, the so-called shinobi hero, had survived this long. As for strongest Hokage, that was another question entirely. While they continued to circle each other with polite words and sharpened knives, Ren moved silently in his mind. System. Check in Hokage's office. 1 second. 10 seconds. 30. Finally, after a full minute, a crisp notification chimed. Ding. Congratulations, host. Check-in location refreshed. Hokage's office. Check-in successful. Reward obtained. 5 elements unsealing, 3 directions seal, Reaper death seal, 5 release, Great Combo Barrage, Composite Ninjutsu, Flame Dragon. Reward stored in system space. Once integrated, the host can perform them with a single hand clap. Ren's eyes didn't change, but inside he nodded. As expected, Hokage's office rewards are stacked. In 10 years, the system had never refreshed this location. Now it finally had. 2 S-rank sealing techniques, 1 A-rank seal and multiple composite techniques. A harvest worth remembering. One reward in particular caught his attention. 3 directions seal, something he vaguely remembered from older shinobi records. Likely involving 2 shadow clones, forming 3 green, transparent pyramid-like barriers from 3 directions to trap the target inside a sealed space. While Ren was sorting through his gains, Hiruzen finally stopped pretending. He rose, slammed the desk and roared. Uchiha Fugaku. What exactly did your clan do last night? That damn, Koharu spat, face twisted. Fugaku, you can really act, Hamura snarled. The 2 elders flashed forward instantly, pinning Fugaku between them, left and right, like a pair of blades closing in. Outside the Hokage tower, sharp sounds cut through the air. Anbu, already prepared, surrounded the building in an instant, slipping into combat formation. Fugaku's eyes hardened. Hiruzen Sarutobi, he said coldly, you still want to ask what happened last night? Last night, Danzo led Root into the Uchiha district to exterminate us. Don't tell me Konoha's leadership knew nothing about that. I knew, Hiruzen admitted, face dark. Then there's nothing left to ask. Fugaku's voice sharpened with disdain. Root and Danzo were wiped out by the Uchiha. What? By the Uchiha? Impossible. Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura stared for a beat, then shook their heads like they'd heard the funniest lie in the world. They knew the Uchiha's strength. If the Uchiha could wipe out Danzo and Root, the extermination plan would never have been approved. Fugaku's expression didn't change. The Uchiha alone couldn't. He paused, then turned his eyes toward Ren. But the meaning was clear. I've said what I can. Now it's your turn. Chapter 77, The Mask Comes Off, Conqueror's Haki. Sensing Fugaku's silent plea, Ren's expression didn't change. He gave the slightest nod, so casual it could have been mistaken for nothing. Fugaku exhaled in relief. To be honest, this was the first time in his life he'd stood in front of Konoha's high command with his back straight, speaking without fear. It felt intoxicating. In the past, as the Uchiha clan head, even a single sentence in front of the elders had required caution. One wrong word and Konoha's leadership would find a reason to tighten the leash, fabricate a charge, squeeze the clan's resources, push them deeper into the corner. But Konoha's leadership was still Konoha's leadership. When they truly snapped, Fugaku alone couldn't withstand it. In the next breath, under the stunned eyes of Hiruzen, Koharu, and Hamura, Fugaku abruptly stepped forward, completely ignoring the kunai in the elder's hands, and made a formal, sweeping gesture toward Ren. A gesture that could only mean one thing. Please step forward. Please take over. What? Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. The anger on Koharu and Hamura's faces faltered into confusion. What are you doing, Fugaku? Damn you, are you playing games with us? Koharu and Hamura finally lost what little restraint they had left. Their eyes flashed cold. They lunged in from both sides, left and right, moving with the ruthless speed of veterans. Hiruzen's gaze sharpened as well. His right hand lifted, ready to give the command. ANBU were already in position outside. If he ordered it, they would swarm in instantly. The mask was off. If diplomacy was dead, then the fastest way to regain control was simple. Capture Fugaku. Break him. Extract the truth. Fugaku only laughed. He crossed his arms. And didn't even try to defend. It was blatant provocation. You're looking down on us? Hamura snarled, fury twisting his face. Koharu and Hamura drove their kunai straight toward Fugaku's eyes, fast enough to take out the Sharingan before he could blink. If you despise them, then you lose what makes you Uchiha. But just as the blades were about to bite, a vast, overwhelming pressure erupted from Ren. No warning. No gradual rise. It detonated like a storm breaking open the sky. In an instant that aura shot upward, straight through the Hokage Tower, and spread outward like a tidal wave. The building shuddered. The air warped. Even the space around them seemed to ripple, as if the world itself had flinched. A king's will. A presence that demanded the heavens bow. A force that made everything beneath it feel small. This wasn't chakra. This wasn't genjutsu. This was Conqueror's haki, pure dominance. Ren had never fully released it before. Not once since fusing Whitebeard's template. But standing in front of Sarutobi Hiruzen, his patience finally snapped. He'd never felt any real belonging to Konoha. Even after transmigrating into the Uchiha and awakening the system, he hadn't tried to save the plot or steer destiny. He only wanted to check in quietly, stack power, take a few wives, and when the Fourth Shinobi World War arrived, step onto the stage as an unrivaled force and stun the entire world. But Konoha chose this. The Uchiha were going to be exterminated. And Ren wasn't sure sway. He wasn't Itachi. He wasn't going to swallow it. So, after 10 years of restraint, he exploded. Boom! Under Ren's precise control, the crushing pressure, laced with his disgust and fury, hammered down on Koharu, Hamura, Hiruzen, and on every ANBU lying in wait around the tower. What is this? Ren, how can he release this kind of pressure? Impossible. Koharu and Hamura froze mid-lunge, their bodies locking up like puppets with cut strings. Even Hiruzen's eyes widened in disbelief. Then, the weaker ones didn't even get a second to understand. A ringing roar filled their skulls. Their bodies trembled. And they stood there, blank, rigid, before collapsing like felled trees. This isn't genjutsu. It's raw pressure? Koharu and Hamura's aged faces twisted in horror. They had never imagined a human being could emit a presence like this. Ren looked at them without emotion. Humph. That single sound, barely more than breath, shattered what remained of their composure. In their minds, a massive white-bearded figure appeared, fist raised, carrying a force that could end the world. And it was coming straight for them. The elders' spirits cracked. Buzz. Their consciousness snapped. A heartbeat later, their eyes rolled back. They dropped. Thud, thud. Koharu Uchiha and Hamura Midokado hit the ground first. Outside the tower, ANBU fell in waves, most of them unable to resist at all. Only a few elite Jonin-level ANBU managed to stay standing. Even so, when they recovered enough to breathe, they stared at the Hokage Tower, faces pale, hearts hammering. They weren't idiots. They knew exactly where that pressure had come from. From inside the Hokage's office. From the man the Hokage had just ignored. From Uchiha Ren. Chapter 78, Killing Hamura and Koharu. Inside the Hokage's office. Not bad. Ren drew his will back in, Conqueror's haki vanishing as abruptly as it had erupted. He swept the room with observation haki, then nodded in quiet satisfaction. His first full release had been a little rough at the start, enough to crack parts of the Hokage Tower. But once he adjusted, his control became razor clean. The pressure had only targeted its intended victims. Koharu Uchiha, Hamura Midokado, Sarutobi Hiruzen, and the ANBU hidden around the building. Perfect effect. You. Koharu rasped from the floor, still trembling, staring up at him like she'd seen a ghost. So it was you. The Uchiha she'd never once taken seriously. was now standing above her like a born monarch, suppressing the room with sheer presence. Hamura lay nearby, his glasses knocked off, his face a mix of disbelief and horror. Uchiha Ren, you hid that deeply. As for Hiruzen, he remained in his chair, but the calm was gone. Completely. Inside, a tidal wave was tearing him apart. At this point, the truth was obvious. Even an idiot could see it now. Ren was the real hand behind everything. Which explained why Danzo and Roots elites had vanished. Which explained why the Sarutobi shinobi had been slaughtered overnight. Hiruzen could endure Ren's pressure with stubborn will and Hokage-level strength. But he couldn't accept what it meant. He'd watched Ren through the crystal ball. He'd even sent Shursui to test him. Every conclusion had pointed to the same thing. Pure taijutsu. No ninjutsu. No threat. And now? That non-threat had shattered the extermination plan, erased the Sarutobi shinobi, and walked straight into the Hokage's office to establish dominance. It was humiliation at point-blank range. The kind that tasted like swallowing filth. And yet, there was nothing Hiruzen could do about the fact that he should have crushed Ren long ago. The only one who still looked composed was Fugaku. After witnessing Ren's strength with his own eyes, the sheer pressure didn't even shake him anymore. If anything, he felt a grim kind of relief. Thank God he was born Uchiha. If he'd been born elsewhere. Ren stepped forward and looked down at Koharu and Hamura. His voice stayed flat. Now we can talk properly. Do you still want to fight? Koharu forced herself to glare up at him, even as fear shook her bones. Uchiha Ren, are you trying to rebel? You hid for all these years Wolf's ambition. Then she spat the stupidest line possible. If you've got the guts, kill us. Hamura, emboldened by her defiance, drew in a breath and tried to recover his old elder posture. His chin lifted. We're Konoha's leadership. If you kill. He didn't finish. Ren's right hand tightened. Murakamajiri appeared in his grip. One clean motion. Slash. Hamura's head left his shoulders. So fast the threat never even had time to become a sentence. Hiss. Blood sprayed. Hamura's eyes stayed wide, frozen in shocked disbelief as his body and head separated. His last thought was a hollow, stupid question. Why is it like this? He'd only meant to threaten Ren out of habit. The reflex of a man who'd lived his whole life above everyone else. He never imagined Ren would simply kill him. No negotiation. No hesitation. No political consequences. Just death. Koharu's face snapped into terror. You killed Hamura? She screamed, voice cracking, staring at Ren like he was a devil wearing a man's skin. Hiruzen's hands trembled. Rage burned through him so violently his body shook. Under his desk, Danzo's head still sat hidden like a curse. And now Hamura's body was bleeding out in his office. You. Hiruzen's voice came out raw. You. Ren shrugged lightly, almost amused. You all heard him. He asked me to kill him. He smiled. In my life I've never heard a more suicidal request. Then Ren's gaze slid to Koharu. And you're next. His eyes turned cold, killing intent no longer concealed. Cut the weeds. Pull the roots. If you leave them, they grow back. He'd already stepped onto the stage. So he might as well finish the job. You people ruined my quiet check-ins. You tried to erase the Uchiha. You made me move. So he would take their lives and to hell with the plot. No. Koharu panicked, voice tearing. I surrender. I concede. Too late. Murakamajiri traced a strange, elegant curve through the air. And Koharu's head flew free. A clean arc. A wet thud. Just like Hamura. Even in death, she probably couldn't understand it. How could he be this ruthless? They were Konoha's high command. Surely he had to fear consequences. But Ren killed them the way a man kills stray dogs. Without the slightest hesitation. Chapter 79, Turning Konoha Upside Down. Thud. A crisp, sickening sound. Koharu Udatane's head hit the floor and rolled. Silence. Dead silence swallowed the office whole. Fugaku and Hiruzen stared at Ren as if struck by lightning, their faces blank with disbelief. Terrifying. Too terrifying. Neither of them had expected Ren to move like that. No warning, no hesitation, killing Koharu and Hamura so cleanly they didn't even get a second sentence. Gulp. A few seconds later, Fugaku finally swallowed, throat dry. The shock in his eyes slowly shifted into something else. Admiration. Respect. Even worship. To kill Konoha's high command, Shimura Danzo, Koharu Udatane, Hamura Mitokado, like it was casual conversation. In the entire shinobi world, maybe only Ren could pull that off. Too brutal. Too overbearing. Too absolute. It's over. Hiruzen's vision swam. The room tilted. He tried to stop it. But Ren's strike had been too fast. All he could do was watch. Now the truth was simple and horrifying. Danzo was dead. Koharu and Hamura were dead. Root's elites were gone. The Sarutobi clan's shinobi had been wiped out. Konoha's strength had been carved down by at least a third overnight. And once word spread, it didn't take a genius to know what would happen next. Sunagakure, Iwagakure, Kumogakure, Kirigakure. None of them would pass up a chance to kick Konoha while it was bleeding. The Second and Third Shinobi World Wars had ended with Konoha standing victorious. Now Konoha was tearing itself apart. A gift from the heavens. Only an idiot would fail to seize it. The more Hiruzen thought, the colder he became. The more his mind raced, the more his spine crawled with dread. He'd spent his entire life chasing one thing. To sit on the Hokage's seat just a little longer, to keep Konoha peaceful a little longer, to be the guiding fire that led the village forward. And now? Everything was smoke. All of it. And Hiruzen didn't know. If he'd been a better man, Ren might never have been forced to reveal himself at all. Cause and effect. This was simply his reckoning. Uchiha Ren? At last Hiruzen snapped. Maybe he couldn't endure anymore. Maybe he finally realized his Hokage era was ending here. His face twisted with fury as he roared. What do you think you're doing? You're dragging Konoha into an abyss, into ruin it can never climb out of. Oh. Ren tilted his head, eyes flat. He looked at Hiruzen the way you looked at something pitiful. You did this to yourself. Yes, Hiruzen had once been a real figure. Otherwise the second Hokage wouldn't have handed him the hat. He'd beaten Danzo not because he was cleaner, but because his willingness to sacrifice had been more convincing. But after he took the seat, he changed. He grew addicted to the position. The White Fang was condemned for choosing comrades over mission, and Hiruzen stayed silent. Orochimaru grew more dangerous by the day, and Hiruzen looked away because he didn't want to lose power. The night of the Nine-Tails attack, he gave Minato too little support. After Minato died, he returned to the throne. Naruto's arrangement. The Uchiha's isolation. The massacre. One compromise after another, until compromise became his nature. And you think the Uchiha are normal? Hiruzen spat, voice sharp with desperation. Name one Uchiha powerhouse who was ever normal. Madara. Izuna. Kagami. Shisui. Itachi. Even Fugaku. And you? His voice dropped into something ugly. You're the least normal of all. So yes, Hiruzen said, slamming a hand to his chest like he meant it. Erasing the Uchiha would have been good for everyone. Do you have any idea how much I've endured for Konoha's peace and prosperity? How much effort I've spent holding everything together? Ren's mouth curved slightly. For once, you're not wrong. Uchiha who awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. Their minds often weren't stable. Even Fugaku had only become better after being nudged by Konoha Tsukumi. But so what? As long as Ren himself was steady, everyone else's sanity was their problem. Though with a system like his, maybe normal was a luxury he'd already lost. Hiruzen shook his head, eyes unfocused, breathing rough. It's finished. Konoha is finished. His voice became hoarse, almost mad. When a man has nothing left, he has nothing left to fear. Chakra surged from Hiruzen like a rising flood. A massive wave of power exploded outward, hot, heavy, unmistakably Hokage level. Ren's eyes lit up. Good. He smiled. If you're finally done holding back, then let's flip Konoha completely upside down. He clenched both fists. A pale white glow wrapped around his knuckles, layered with Armament Haki. Air quake. His fists drove forward and smashed into the air itself. In the next instant, a terrifying vibration burst outward like a magnitude 13 earthquake, surging through the Hokage Tower and racing toward the entire village. The air exploded. Invisible force became visible. From the Hokage Tower as the center, Hairline fractures spread through the sky like cracks through glass, rippling outward in rings, turning the air above Konoha into trembling water. And the whole village began to shake. Chapter 80: The Public Execution of Sarutobi Hiruzen. Konoha Village. The news still hadn't spread. Roots elites wiped out, Shimura Danzo dead, the Sarutobi clan's shinobi slaughtered. So the village looked normal. Calm. Peaceful. Like any other morning. Then, boom. A pressure so heavy it made souls shiver swept across the village, gone in an instant. A few minutes later, something even stranger happened. The air above Konoha cracked, like a mirror struck by a hammer. Hairline fractures rippled outward one after another, visible to the naked eye. In that moment, time itself seemed to stall. Civilians froze. Shinobi froze. Faces locked in disbelief, minds empty except for one impossible thought. How can the air have cracks? Enemy attack. Enemy attack. Hurry, get to the Hokage Tower. Something happened to the third Hokage. The stunned silence shattered into chaos. Civilians bolted for the shelters. Meanwhile, Konoha's shinobi and the major clans turned grimly toward the Hokage Tower. Because those fractures in the air, they were spreading from that direction. Move! To the Hokage's office. The third Hokage is in danger. Hyuga, Akimichi, Nara, Yamanaka, Inazuka, one after another, clan heads and elite shinobi shot across the rooftops toward the center. Even ANBU on patrol, still unaware of what had truly unfolded overnight, raced in with pale faces. Inside the Hokage's office, Hiruzen stared at the trembling air, then at Ren. His pupils tightened. What kind of bloodline is this? The more Ren revealed, the deeper Hiruzen's fear became. First that crushing, tyrannical aura. Now a single strike that made the air itself fracture, enough to send ripples across the entire village. Hiruzen's madness faltered for the first time. A flicker of real terror broke through. Then he realized something and his face turned even worse. Wait, you're doing this on purpose. You're trying to draw every shinobi in Konoha here. Exactly. Rin nodded as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. What he'd done just now wasn't a lethal attack. He'd simply cracked the air, no direct killing power behind it. It was a signal. A beacon. He wanted the village to come running. Because at this point there was no point playing small. If he'd already stepped onto the stage, then he might as well burn the curtain down. He would smash Sarutobi Hiruzen in front of everyone. And put an end to the so-called Will of Fire faction with his own hands. Hiruzen's voice shook with fury. Your intentions are vile. Ren's gaze stayed calm. This is only the beginning. He checked with observation haki, judging the movement outside. They're here. Close enough. Then Ren stomped his right foot into the floor. The Hokage Tower, already unstable, finally gave up. With a groaning crack, the building collapsed. Move. 3 figures shot out in a blur. Ren, Fugaku, and Sarutobi Hiruzen. They landed in the open plaza before the ruined tower. By then, Konoha's shinobi were already arriving in waves. Third Hokage? Isn't that Uchiha Ren? What the hell is going on? Don't tell me the Uchiha are rebelling, right into the Hokage's office? Confusion rippled through the crowd. Only the clan heads reacted differently, faces tightening as the situation clicked into place. Whatever happened last night, the Uchiha extermination plan had clearly failed. And this man, Ren, was almost certainly the hidden key behind it. Hyuga Hayashi, Akimichi Choza, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, Aburame Shibi. Their expressions became delicate. Careful. Because this wasn't just conflict anymore. This was a blade at Konoha's throat. Ren, what are you doing? Might Guy murmured, disbelief thick in his voice. Is he really going to rebel? Beside him, Kakashi, freshly out of ANBU, went rigid. The Uchiha rebelling? And not secretly. Not in the shadows. But right in front of the third Hokage? That was insanity. Even Yugao Yuzuki and Kurenai Yuhi stared, stunned. Ren, he's this dangerous? Then, whoosh. Another figure dropped into the plaza. It was Fugaku. And in his hands were 3 severed heads. Everyone, don't misunderstand, Fugaku said coldly. The Uchiha are only counterattacking because we were forced. No one even heard the second half properly. Because the moment they saw what he was holding, the crowd's blood went cold. Ah, that's the elders? 3 faces, dead-eyed and twisted. Shimura Danzo, Koharu Uchiha, Hamura Mitokado. The so-called Konoha leadership. All dead. A wave of horrified uproar exploded through the plaza. For a moment, every single person shared the same thought. This is madness. The Uchiha are completely out of control. How bold, how ruthless, how insane do you have to be to do this? Chapter 81, The Weakest Hokage in History. The moment Fugaku revealed the 3 severed heads, the entire plaza fell into a deathly silence. No one could speak. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. Shimura Danzo, Koharu Uchiha, Hamura Mitokado. These weren't nameless corpses. They were the kind of people who, under normal circumstances, could stomp once and make Konoha tremble. And now they were trophies. This is bad. Konoha's about to change. What do we do? Do we step in and suppress the Uchiha? The 3rd Hokage isn't dead yet. Since when did the Uchiha have this kind of backbone? As the shock settled into a cold dread, the clan heads, Hyuga Hayashi, Akimichi Choza, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, Aburame Shibi, forced themselves to breathe and started calculating. They weren't idiots. If Danzo, Koharu, and Hamura were dead, then Hiruzen and the Uchiha were already past the point of no return. This would end with a winner and a loser. And the winner would take everything. So the question became the only question that mattered. Who do we stand behind? Hayashi's eyes narrowed. Choza's jaw tightened. Shikaku scanned the plaza with sharp, controlled calm. Then his brow creased. Where are the Sarutobi clan shinobi? He looked again. Not a single Sarutobi uniform in sight. That was wrong. The Sarutobi were one of Konoha's major clans. Fugaku answered coldly, as if he'd been waiting for someone to ask. Last night, Konoha's leadership decided to exterminate the Uchiha. So we counterattacked. We killed Danzo. We wiped out most of Root's elites. Then he paused, letting the words sink in. And for retaliation, we slaughtered every Sarutobi clan shinobi. And we went into the Hokage's office and killed the elders. The plaza sucked in air all at once. You could hear the swallowing. The sharp, involuntary hiss of fear. But beneath that fear, many shinobi felt a grim, ugly clarity settle into place. So that's why. The Uchiha weren't rebelling for fun. They'd been pushed to the edge. Konoha's leadership tried to erase them, and got their throats cut for it. It was embarrassing. For the village. For the Hokage. Because if you strike first and still get butchered, what does that make you? Might Guy, Kakashi, Gunma, many of them lowered their eyes, expressions tight, saying nothing. As shinobi, they couldn't openly show it. But the feeling was there. This wasn't some simple Uchiha evil story anymore. Hiruzen's heart felt like it was being carved open. He stared at Ren like he wanted to burn him with his eyes. Then he spoke, voice cold, heavy with doctrine. Where leaves dance, the fire lives on. You'll never understand how great the will of fire is. Without me, without Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu, how do you think Konoha became the #1 village in the shinobi world? His fists clenched. Then his gaze snapped to the clan heads. Why are you standing there? All of you attack. Kill Uchiha Ren. And then wipe out the Uchiha. He didn't even look at Kakashi or Guy. He knew the truth. With Root destroyed and most ANBU knocked out earlier, Konoha's remaining strength was in the clans. If the clans moved, the outcome wasn't guaranteed. But the clan heads almost choked. Are you serious? Your mess dragging us into it? Anyone with eyes could see it. Konoha's leadership was already crushed. Stepping forward now wasn't loyalty. It was suicide. And the will of fire? That wouldn't stop a blade. Hayashi didn't move. Choza didn't move. Inoichi didn't move. Shikaku felt Hiruzen's stare land on him, sharp, demanding. Say something. So Shikaku forced his face into something neutral and spoke with the smoothness of a man who'd survived Konoha politics for decades. Third Hokage, I believe you've always endured to protect the village. Then he added, carefully, you should believe in yourself. It wasn't support. It was a polite refusal dressed as comfort. The others immediately caught on. Yes, third Hokage, believe in yourself. We trust you. Once you win, we'll help you handle the Uchiha. Empty promises. A wall of words. A way to avoid committing. Hiruzen's face turned uglier and uglier. Finally, he spat a mouthful of blood. He hadn't expected it. At the critical moment, the clans didn't back him. They were abandoning him. Betraying him. Heh. Ren let out a small, amused breath. He didn't care. Clan heads were clan heads, every last one of them an old fox. Konoha's leadership was clearly losing. Who would step forward and die with them? Besides, even if they did choose a side, Ren still wasn't worried. He had a card left to play. At that moment, a new commotion rose from the edge of the plaza. Small voices. Children. Grandpa Third, what's happening? Third Hokage, who are you fighting? A group of 5- and 6-year-olds were guided forward by several Uchiha. And if you looked closely, they weren't random kids. Uzumaki Naruto. Uchiha Sasuke. Hyuga Neji. Hyuga Hinata. Nara Shikamaru. The future rookies of Konoha appearing here now. The clan heads' faces went stiff. Hayashi's blood ran cold at the sight of Hinata and Neji. Shikaka's expression almost cracked when he saw Shikamaru. Choso's breathing went heavy. What the hell, that's Hinata, Neji too. Are the Uchiha using the kids as leverage? So that's why. Someone muttered, shaken. Good thing we didn't choose a side. The fear in the clan heads' hearts sharpened into a clear conclusion. Ren's planning is too deep. They'd all underestimated him, just like everyone else. A mere taijutsu elite jonin? What a joke. This was a man who struck where it hurt most and didn't blink. Ren looked at Hiruzen, eyes turning flat and cold. All right. The weakest Hokage in history. Let's begin. He clapped his hands together. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 3 clones burst out at once and shot into position, east, south, and west, forming a triangle around the plaza. Then chakra surged. 3 directions seal. A green, translucent pyramid barrier unfolded between them, clear as glass, hard as iron, locking Ren and Sarutobi Hiruzen inside. A cage. A stage. A public execution ground. And in front of every clan, every shinobi, every child, Ren was about to smash the third Hokage into the dirt. Chapter 82, Ninjutsu? Isn't it just a clap away? Just 2 hand claps and you cast 2 jutsu? Ren didn't use ninjutsu and the crowd could still accept it as taijutsu monster. But the moment he did, the entire plaza went rigid. Even Sarutobi Hiruzen, the so-called professor, the man praised as a living encyclopedia of jutsu, felt his pupils shrink in shock. And now, especially after seeing the children brought forward. Uzumaki Naruto, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Hyuga Hinata, the Hyuga's little princess. Nara Shikamaru and the others. Hiruzen finally understood what Ren was truly doing. This wasn't just about killing him. This was about killing him in front of the present and the future. About crushing the will of fire not only in this generation, but in the next one too. For years, to pass on his ideology, Hiruzen visited the academy over and over. He wore his warmest smile, spoke in the kindest voice, repeated the same words again and again, until the children believed it in their bones. And among all of them, he'd invested the most in Naruto. He'd once even tried to have Shisui use Konoha Tsukimi on Naruto. But Shisui refused, saying the cooldown was too long. So Hiruzen raised Naruto as an orphan instead. A lonely child starved for affection. Because the moment Hiruzen offered a little warmth at the right time, Naruto would cling to it like salvation. The perfect result. The perfect loyalty. And now, every calculation had been smashed to dust. Ren exhaled slowly, eyes cold. Come on then. It's time to end this. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Hiruzen's laughter burst out, wild, cracked, full of hatred. He'd schemed against countless people after taking the Hokage's seat. And never imagined he'd be the one cornered like this. Rage. Endless, screaming rage. Shuriken whistled through the air. Hiruzen's chakra surged violently as his hands blurred through seals. Ninja art, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. The thrown shuriken multiplied mid-flight. 1 became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. Until the sky inside the barrier turned into a black storm. I'll defeat you right where you're proudest. Ren's gaze didn't even flicker. With observation haki, he read the trajectory in a breath. He tossed his own weapons, kunai flashing. And then, for the first time, he stopped suppressing the chakra of his sage-like body. It erupted outward like a tidal wave. He clapped his hands twice. Ninja Art, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Ninja Art, Giant Shuriken Jutsu. In an instant, a dense mass of weapons burst forth, dark as a storm cloud. Hiruzen gritted his teeth and forced more seals, refusing to be outdone. Ninja Art, Giant Shuriken Jutsu. But the moment he finished, he realized Ren had already cast it first. A series of deafening impacts rang out. Giant shuriken, magnified to absurd size, collided head-on in midair. Steel screamed. Shockwaves thudded through the barrier. Hiruzen's face paled. Impossible. Ren wasn't just copying him. Ren was moving like he could see the next page before it was written. Hiruzen's hands turned into afterimages again. Fire style, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Lightning style, Thunder Crash. Water style, Water Dragon Bullet. Earth style, Earth Dragon Bullet. Wind style, Cyclone. 5 natures, one after another, 10+ jutsu in rapid succession. Outside the barrier, the watching shinobi gaped. Even the children stared with mouths open. Some people couldn't help blurting it out. As expected of the professor. But Ren's response was even more brutal in its simplicity. He didn't weave a single seal. He just kept clapping, chakra surging like it had no bottom. Fire style, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. Lightning style, Thunder Crash. Water style, Water Dragon Bullet. Earth style, Earth Dragon Bullet. Wind style, Cyclone. Same jutsu. Same elements. Different method. Even a child could tell who looked more terrifying. Ren's chakra was heavier. Wilder. And he was casting without hand seals. Inside the barrier, the techniques collided in a chaotic storm. Fire and wind tearing, water and lightning exploding, earth shattering under pressure. Boom after boom after boom. The ground shook again and again. If not for the barrier, the entire district would have been erased into rubble. Even with the barrier, the sight made people's scalps prickle. Hiruzen was already breathing hard. His chest heaved as he stared at Ren like he was looking at something inhuman. Seal-less casting alone was bad enough. But Ren also seemed to guess what he was about to do before he did it. And worst of all, Ren's stamina and chakra reserves were simply overwhelming. No comparison. No mercy. Ren's lips curled, almost enjoying himself. Weakest Hokage in history. This is fun. 10 years of signing in. 10 years of collecting techniques. Only now, facing Hiruzen head-on, did Ren truly feel it. I'm this strong. The only shame was that Hiruzen was old. Past his prime. Barely a dozen high-level techniques and he was already panting. In the world Ren borrowed his strength from. Monsters fought for days without blinking. Hiruzen's eyes burned with stubborn fury. I don't believe it. He inhaled sharply, forcing his chakra to surge again as his hands flew through seals. 5 release, Great Barrage Jutsu. He finished. And at the same moment, Ren clapped again. Chapter 83, Hiruzen's Collapse. 5 release, Great Barrage Jutsu. It was the same scene all over again. The same jutsu. Under the gaze of countless eyes, Hiruzen and Ren each produced 4 shadow clones, 5 pairs in total, and every pair fought one-on-one, unleashing fire, lightning, water, earth and wind techniques at the same time. The roar of impact shook the air again. 5 natures clashed, detonating into brutal shockwaves that ripped across the ground, already torn into trenches, until it suffered yet another round of near-total devastation. Boom! But this time the difference was unmistakable. Hiruzen staggered back dozens of steps, clearly struggling to hold his ground, his face drained of color. Ren, meanwhile, didn't move an inch. And at some point, without anyone noticing, Armament Haki had already wrapped his body like invisible armor. No, that's impossible. Hiruzen looked like something inside him was cracking. How do you know 5 release, Great Barrage Jutsu? You were supposed to be training taijutsu, how could you possibly know so many jutsu, even this one? It was ridiculous. Hiruzen bore the title professor because he'd built his pride on jutsu mastery, especially composite techniques. And yet in front of Ren, Every ounce of that pride was being ground into dust. Hiruzen's hand seals were fast? Ren didn't need seals at all. Hiruzen knew countless jutsu? Ren matched him, and the output was heavier, more violent. Even Hiruzen's cherished composite technique. Ren could use it too. The humiliation hit like a fist to the throat. For the first time in a long, long time. Hiruzen tasted helplessness. I refused to believe it. His expression twisted, stubborn fury overriding reason. Ninja art, summoning jutsu. He slammed through seals at top speed. He didn't believe Ren could summon this as well. A burst of smoke exploded. And the Monkey King, Enma, appeared inside the barrier. Enma stretched lazily, brow furrowing as he took in the atmosphere. Sarutobi, what is it this time? Hiruzen opened his mouth to answer. And then his eyes widened as he noticed something. Wah! Bang! Enma didn't even finish the sentence. His body was smashed sideways by a single punch, hurled across the space and slammed into the green barrier wall hard enough to make the entire formation shudder. GHH! Enma crashed down, spat blood and stared in pure shock. It hurt. It hurt like hell. Who the hell had just punched through his adamantine defense? His insides felt like they'd been kicked apart. He coughed again, blood splattering the ground. Enma! Hiruzen flashed to his side, voice tight. Are you all right? I can still fight. Enma wiped the blood from his mouth, face tight with disbelief. Who is this opponent? That punch, that power, don't tell me it's the fourth Raikage. He's a monster, Hiruzen said, fist trembling as he clenched it. A monster on the level of the first Hokage. The words tasted like ash. His voice dropped, almost involuntary. I might end in disgrace. What, your dirty deeds got exposed? Enma's mouth twitched. That doesn't make sense. You've always covered your tracks perfectly. Enough. Hiruzen cut him off, sharp and irritated. As if the very idea offended him. What dirty deeds? Everything he did was for Konoha. Only a few small things had been for himself. Ren stepped forward, expression flat. Your defense isn't bad. His voice was calm, almost bored. I was just warming up. Enma's eyes flicked to Ren's chest, to the Uchiha crest. A Uchiha? His brow creased, disbelief rising. Sarutobi, a Uchiha beat you into this state? Hiruzen's face went rigid. Yes. Ren didn't bother with more talk. His right hand tightened. And Murakamajiri appeared. White light crawled along the blade, mixed with Armament Haki, the edge humming with a dangerous, violent presence. Murakamajiri, tremor slash. SHHK. Ren surged forward, blade tearing through the air toward Hiruzen. Danger! Move! Hiruzen and Enma both felt it at the same instant. A lethal pressure that made their skin crawl. In a flash, Enma transformed into the adamantine staff, landing in Hiruzen's hands. Clang! Murakamajiri struck the staff head-on. The collision produced a brutal shock, and the air itself split with a cracking sound. Sarutobi, this is bad. Enma's voice echoed through the staff, strained. What is this power? Boom! Hiruzen was blasted backward anyway, launched off his feet and slammed into the ground dozens of meters away. He coughed up blood the moment he hit. NGH. At the same time, Enma snapped back into his true form, one hand clutching his abdomen, face contorted in pain. Something had broken through his adamantine body. And the force was still rampaging inside him, tearing him up from within. Enma! Hiruzen wiped blood from his mouth, voice hoarse. Enma shook, teeth clenched. I can't, what kind of monster is he? And then... Poof! Enma dissolved into smoke, forced back to wherever he'd been summoned from. Hiruzen's heart dropped. Because in that instant he understood. His final card, Reaper Death Seal, wasn't happening. Ren's close combat was too overwhelming. There was no chance to hold him in place long enough to perform it. In other words, Hiruzen was finished. Chapter 84, Hiruzen dies, the end of an era. Crushed, is that it? The third Hokage is getting crushed. This Uchiha Ren is too strong. There's no weakness at all. Outside the barrier, the crowd had gone eerily quiet. From clan heads like Hyuga Hayashi, Akimichi Choza, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, and Aburame Shibi. To ANBU, to Jonin, to ordinary shinobi who had rushed here in panic. Everyone was staring at the same scene with the same expression. Disbelief. Because inside that green pyramid-shaped seal, the fight wasn't a fight anymore. It was a one-sided execution. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Hokage, professor, the so-called strongest of his era, had been driven back again and again, coughing blood, his body trembling under the pressure. And Ren hadn't moved from his spot for most of it. When he finally did, it was only to end things faster. Might Guy's thick brows drew tight. He's really that strong. Kakashi's gaze was conflicted, heavy, tangled with old ghosts. The third is going to die. And then, the children. Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, Neji, Shikamaru. 5- and 6-year-old faces at the edge of the crowd, eyes wide and shaking. They watched the man they'd been taught to revere. The Hokage, being beaten into the ground like a broken relic. In an instant, something inside them cracked. Not bone. Belief. Inside the seal, Ren took a slow breath and stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost casual. Hiruzen Sarutobi, you're too weak. He looked down at the old man with detached pity. Any last words? Hiruzen wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and forced himself up, legs unsteady. His eyes were full of rage, humiliation, and an unwillingness to accept reality. I'm not satisfied. He was shaking, not from fear but from the sheer hatred of what this moment meant. Today should have been a celebration. A clean ending. A necessary sacrifice. That was the story he'd rehearsed in his head all night. And yet, the ones who died were his people. His elders. His foundation. His shadow. His clan's shinobi. And now, him. Ren's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You want to talk about justice? He lifted his chin slightly. Do you deserve to face the White Fang? Do you deserve to face the fourth Minato? Do you deserve to face Hizashi Hyuga? You. Enough. Hiruzen snapped, cutting him off with a feral roar. His face twisted, not with dignity but with the raw ugliness of a man cornered. As Hokage, I was never wrong. The will of fire, you don't understand it. He glared through the seal at the watching shinobi, like he needed them to believe him, like if they believed hard enough the world would rewrite itself. You disobedient, arrogant, rebellious people, you're the problem. He straightened his shredded robes with trembling fingers, forcing the last scraps of pride into his spine. Then he laughed. A sharp, broken laugh that sounded like madness trying to pass for courage. I lost. But one day, I'll take back everything that was stolen from me. He raised his hands. Fast seals, desperate seals. And chakra surged like a drowning man's final thrash. Then come die with me. Reaper Death Seal. Black, ink-like chakra erupted from his body, carrying sealing formulas like crawling scars, rushing toward Ren in a violent flood. For a split second, the spectators' hearts stopped. That jutsu wasn't meant to win. It was meant to drag the enemy into the grave. But Ren's eyes shifted. Scarlet. A Mangekyo pattern spun into place, clean and cruel. His voice cut through the moment like a knife. Time reversal. And reality snapped. The sealing ink didn't just stop. It flowed backward. Like the world itself had decided Hiruzen never cast the jutsu at all. In the span of a heartbeat, the reverse 4 symbols seal rewound into nothing. Back to the instant before Hiruzen's hands even finished forming the signs. Hiruzen's mouth opened. No sound came out. His pupils trembled. Your eyes are beyond Mangekyo. That was what finally broke him. Not the pain. Not the humiliation. Not even death. It was the certainty that there was no path left, not even self-destruction. Absolute despair. Ren's expression cooled. Stubborn to the end. A flash. Steel sang. Hiruzen's right arm spun away, blood spraying across the shattered ground. Then another flash. Another limb. Then another. In a blink, his arms and legs were severed, scattered like discarded parts. And finally, a single, quiet arc. Sarutobi Hiruzen's head lifted from his shoulders. His eyes were still open when it fell. Still full of refusal. Still unable to accept that the era had ended. Inside the seal, silence returned. Outside the seal, the entire square froze. Dead. The third Hokage is dead. Some shinobi stood there with blank faces, as if their minds couldn't process the shape of the new world. Others felt something drop in their chests, something heavy and final. For people like the clan heads, Hiruzen's existence wasn't just political. It was time itself. A constant that had been there since their youth. Now it was gone. Just like that. Might Guy exhaled bitter. So this is it. Kakashi didn't speak. His throat felt dry. If Ren was right, if the third truly had a hand in the White Fang's fall, then what was Kakashi supposed to do with that? And the children? Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, Neji, Shikamaru. They stared at the place where the Hokage fell. And something inside their small hearts quietly, irreversibly ended. An era. A belief. A childhood shaped by one man's will of fire. Gone. Chapter 85, The Shinobi World Shakes, the four great villages can't hold back. Is that a god? The third Hokage got killed. He was that weak? So my father's death really had a scheme behind it? Sasuke, Naruto, Hinata, Neji, Shikamaru, every child in the crowd took a blow to the soul. Hiruzen had always stood on the academy podium and told them. The Leaf's greatest secret art, the will of fire. That he was the professor, the ninjutsu genius. That he was the strongest Hokage in history, the man who carried Konoha to the top of the shinobi world. And yet, this was it? Where was this strongest Hokage? He'd just been crushed completely by Uchiha Ren. At that moment, 3 of Ren's shadow clones, each maintaining the 3 direction seal, vanished into white smoke. The green pyramid barrier dissolved on its own. Ren glanced at the dismembered body on the ground, then calmly sheathed Murakumajiri and rolled his shoulders. I'll give you this, at least as Hokage you had some backbone. Then he looked over at Fugaku, who was still standing there like he'd been struck by lightning. Give Sarutobi a burial. Fugaku snapped back to reality and nodded quickly. Understood. Ren's gaze drifted across the clan heads, Hyuga Hayashi, Akimichi Choza, Nara Shikaku, Yamanaka Inoichi, Aburame Shibi. His tone was flat, like he was stating the weather. Have the clans clean up. Wake the ANBU who were knocked out. He paused, eyes cold. The shinobi world is about to go berserk. Yes. Understood. Yes. One after another, the clan heads lowered their gaze. It wasn't worship. It was survival. To old foxes like them, the will of fire was just a slogan. The only law that mattered was simple. Whoever's fist is bigger writes the rules. Right now, Ren's fist was the biggest fist in Konoha. He had slaughtered the entire high command, Danzo, Koharu, Hamura, and now Hiruzen. Winner takes all. From this moment on, Konoha was no longer Konoha. It was the Uchiha's Konoha. And if they were honest, many of them felt relieved. For years, Hiruzen's faction had squeezed the clans one by one, first Senju, then Uchiha, and if the Uchiha fell, the rest would have been next. Ren's counterstrike wasn't just revenge. To them, it was a warning that saved everyone else's neck. The year Konoha bled. Konoha year 55. The strongest village in the world suffered the worst internal war in its history. The Leaf's leadership attempted to erase the Uchiha. Instead, they were erased. They had called Uchiha Ren an elite Jonin taijutsu specialist. A harmless piece on the board. But he was a hidden boss, 10 years of silent preparation, and 1 night of violence. He slaughtered Danzo and wiped out Root's elites. Butchered the Sarutobi clan's shinobi. Executed Koharu and Hamura. And finally killed the third Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, in public. A coup. A dynasty shift. A new age written in blood. When the news hit the wider world, the entire shinobi world convulsed. At first, nobody believed it. Second reaction? Terror. Because Konoha was Konoha. Hiruzen was Hiruzen. And if even he could be killed like that, what did that say about the rest of them? But fear quickly turned into something uglier. Greed. Because with Konoha's high command wiped out, its overall strength had dropped sharply. To the other villages, Konoha looked weak. A wounded giant. And in the shinobi world, there's only one rule when you see weakness. Eat. Cloud Village. The land of lightning's military fortress, violent, aggressive, proud. In recent years, Cloud's forces were the most intact among the 5 great nations. Many shinobi believed Cloud was only missing one thing to claim the title of number one. A decisive war that crushed Konoha. High in the central mountain range. Boom! Two men wrapped in lightning chakra smashed fists together. The shockwave roared through the air. Ha! The fourth Raikage A laughed wildly. Killer B. Again. Idiot. Moron. I'm done. B leapt back, shaking out his aching hand, face full of helpless resignation. A laughed even harder, then withdrew his lightning release aura. At that moment, Raikage, his secretary Mabui, came sprinting in, face pale and voice tight. Something huge happened. A's grin sharpened. Oh? The world's moving again? Mabui swallowed, then forced the words out. Sarutobi Hiruzen. Shimura Danzo. Koharu Udatain. Hamura Mitokado. She looked like she still couldn't believe it. They were all killed by a Uchiha. The man's name is Uchiha Ren. A and B froze. What? A's voice dropped. B's usual swagger vanished. Mabui continued, voice trembling. Konoha has changed hands. It's the Uchiha's Konoha now. Silence. Then A's mouth curled into a slow, savage smile. A chance. He stared into the distance like he could already see Konoha burning. A once-in-a-thousand-years chance. Mabui, call the high command. We move. Mabui's eyes widened. Raikage, you mean? A's smile turned feral. Exactly. Hiruzen died at the perfect time. It's time the title of number one changes hands. Stone Village. The third Suchikade's office. Anoki hovered above his chair, staring at the intelligence report in his hand. The words on it were absurd. Yet every line was detailed, verified, and terrifying. Behind him, Kuratsuchi and Stone's commanders, Yellow Earth, Akatsuchi, and others, stood stiff as statues. No one dared breathe too loudly. After a long silence, Anoki's eyes narrowed. Mobilize. His voice was low, cold, and final. As one of the 5 great villages, we will seek justice for Konoha's fallen leadership. The commander's eyes flashed. They understood immediately. Justice was the excuse. Invading Konoha was the goal. A wounded Konoha was the best Konoha. And the best time to strike was now. Sand Village. The 4th Kazakage's office. Raza threw his head back and laughed like a madman. Hiruzen. Danzo. Koharu. Hamura. You old dogs. So you can die. He squeezed his fist so hard his knuckles whitened. Sand had been humiliated again and again across every war. He hated Konoha with a hatred that never cooled. Before, he could only curse and swallow it, because Konoha was too strong. But now? Now he smelled blood. He licked his lips. We take a chunk out of Konoha. While it's sick, we kill it. Mist Village. Mist had been locked in madness for years under the Bloody Mist era. Even after the Third Great War, the village had been crippled, internally and politically. When Mei Terumi and Ao exposed the 4th Mizukage's condition and ended the Bloody Mist policies, Mist stabilized, but it was still weak. Its wounds hadn't healed. In the Elders' Council chamber, the old guard argued excitedly. This is a chance. We're rebuilding. If we take resources from Konoha, Mist recovers faster. Konoha's high command is dead. This is the weakest Konoha in history. At the head of the room, an elder with a cane sat in silence, eyes cold and practical. Then he tapped the cane once. Thunk. And looked toward the woman with emerald eyes. Mei, what do you think? Mei's lips pressed together. She didn't like it. But she saw Mist's reality too. If Mist stayed passive, it would fall behind forever. Before she could answer, the elder's gaze sharpened. I understand. This time, I'll lead personally. Mist needs to show the world it still has fangs. Mei went quiet, then nodded. Understood. A day later, as if they had rehearsed it together, Cloud, Stone, Sand, and Mist all issued public condemnations. They stood on the highest moral podium, declaring, Uchiha's actions violated peace, violated the post-Third Great War agreements, violated the spirit of stability, and to seek justice for the murdered Konoha leadership. They announced, one after another, they would soon send troops to the Land of Fire. They demanded the Uchiha give an explanation. They demanded Konoha return to order. They demanded A surrender dressed up as diplomacy. The moment those statements spread, the shinobi world exploded. Chapter 86, Akatsuki reacts, the Great Toad Sage makes a move. The moment the news spread, the shinobi world exploded. No one expected Konoha's internal collapse to barely hit the streets before the other 4 great villages moved immediately, wearing righteous faces while loudly condemning the Uchiha. Shock. Pure shock. If it weren't all 4 villages acting at once, people would have thought the 4th Great Ninja War had already begun. Even so, the impact was enough to chill countless shinobi to the bone. Everyone understood one thing clearly. Konoha, the village that had sat on the #1 throne for so long, was about to be dragged off it. Hiruzen's faction had been wiped out. And when the 3rd Hokage, the elders, Root, and an entire major clan all vanished overnight, Konoha's strength didn't just drop. It collapsed. Worse still, this time it was 4 villages striking together. No matter how monstrous Uchiha Ren was, one man couldn't punch 4 armies into dust. So the shinobi world churned like a storm sea. Countless people began to mourn Konoha, to mourn the Uchiha, to mourn Ren, regretting that he'd flipped the table on Konoha's leadership, only to hand the 4 great villages the perfect excuse. A mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Land of Fire border, a casino. Open it. A blonde woman with the kanji for gamble on her back stared calmly at the table and spoke in a flat voice. Tsunade. One of the legendary Sannin. Across from her, a chubby gambler was drenched in sweat, eyes trembling like he was about to cry. He couldn't understand it. Why did the legendary sucker, the famous big sheep everyone loved to fleece, suddenly turn into a walking calamity today? Open. The dealer glanced between them and called it. Both lifted their cups. The result was instant. She won. The big sheep won again. No way. The casino, silent a second ago, erupted into chaos. The chubby gambler rolled his eyes back and fainted on the spot. Tsunade frowned and swept her gaze around the room. Anyone else? The gamblers all instinctively took several steps back. No one dared sit down. From morning until now, Tsunade had won dozens of rounds in a row. When someone's luck was that insane, only a fool challenged it. And gamblers hated being fools. Yet Tsunade didn't look pleased. She looked uneasy. Her luck had improved, but instead of joy she felt a growing restlessness. Like something terrible was about to happen. Tsunade. A blur rushed in. Shizen sprinted through the door, ignoring the mountain of chips, and leaned in close to whisper urgently. Tsunade's expression changed in an instant. What? Then she stood so hard the chair scraped the floor. We're going back to Konoha. She didn't even look at the table as she strode out. Shizen stared at the chips for half a second, eyes full of pain, then gritted her teeth and chased after her. Behind them, the casino was left with only a crowd of gamblers staring at the untouched fortune, eyes shining like wolves. Land of Rain, Akatsuki. A tall tower in the heart of Amigakure. When word reached Akatsuki about what had happened in Konoha, and about the 4 great villages preparing to strike, everyone's expressions shifted. Stunned? Of course. They hadn't expected the Uchiha to be hiding a monster like this. Someone who didn't like Konoha's leadership? He didn't scheme. He didn't compromise. He just killed them, cleanly, brutally, and without leaving himself any retreat. If anything, that kind of person felt like he belonged in Akatsuki. Teacher Sarutobi is dead? Orochimaru's pale face twitched with disbelief. He'd lost count of how many times he'd thought impossible since hearing the news, but reality didn't care what he believed. He had joined Akatsuki largely because of the Rinnegan, and because he'd always planned to one day kill Hiruzen with his own hands. Now Hiruzen was already dead. Orochimaru's gaze drifted, slowly, toward the newest member standing in the shadows. Uchiha Itachi. More precisely, toward Itachi's eyes. The Rinnegan was difficult. A Mangekyo Sharingan might be closer. Itachi noticed the look and gave a cold snort. If anyone watched closely, they'd see it. Itachi was different now. His eyes were empty. No warmth. No hesitation. Only a quiet, frozen cruelty. After Konoha's will of fire had been smashed to pieces, his beliefs had collapsed with it, and hidden beneath his clothes, Black Zetsu had already planted Hashirama cells into his body. In the center of the room, the Deva Path spoke at last. Now that the shinobi world is destabilizing, our plan to collect the tailed beasts will be delayed. What? Delayed again? Haiden complained immediately. Kakuzu didn't even look up. Fine by me. Haiden, we can do more bounty jobs in the meantime. Like hell I'm going with you. Haiden snapped. Working with Kakuzu always felt like being chained to a ledger, because Kakuzu treated money like religion. Biwa Jizo bared his teeth. I was planning to move with Itachi to deal with the Three Tails. Looks like that's postponed too. Sasori's voice scraped out like rusted metal. Now the world's chaotic. Let them tear each other apart. When Konoha and the 4 villages bleed each other dry. That's when we move. The Deva Path's voice returned, flat, final. Since we're delaying, we'll recruit additional members. I'll send the list. Then, meeting adjourned. This time we watch. Mount Mayaboku, the great toad sage awakens. Deep within the sacred land of Mount Mayaboku, inside an ancient temple, an old orange toad sat half asleep. Yellow eyes. A necklace of prayer beads. A scholar's cap perched crookedly on his head. The great toad sage. He dozed. Then, his eyes snapped open. What? His old face tightened with shock. The future had changed. Completely. The so-called child of prophecy blurred into nothing. The shinobi world's fate became a fog so thick he couldn't see through it. For the first time in a long, long time, he could no longer read tomorrow. A moment later, 2 elder toads hurried in. Fukasaku and Shima. Great Sage Jiraiya is here. He says it's urgent. The great toad sage sighed as if he already knew. Let him in. Yes. Minutes later, Jiraiya stumbled into the temple like a man whose soul had been hollowed out. He dropped to his knees. The old man was butchered. His whole body trembled. He couldn't understand it. He had left Konoha to bring Orochimaru back. And while he was gone, his teacher died. Worse. After the news broke, Jiraiya had returned secretly to Konoha once, and discovered something that made him go cold. The new, Uchiha-led Konoha had printed and distributed a document. The third Hokage, 10 Sins. It was everywhere. In every street. In every hand. Hiruzen's reputation had been executed right alongside his body. In the current Konoha, Sarutobi Hiruzen wasn't a hero. He was a rat in daylight, despised by all. Jiraiya's fists clenched until his nails dug in. Even if he hated many of Hiruzen's choices, that man was still his teacher. A father in all but blood. He couldn't accept this ending. I know, the great toad sage said heavily. Konoha's future, the world's future. It has all changed. I don't even know where it leads now. Jiraiya's voice turned rough. But I can't accept it. No matter what, as Hokage, he did more good than harm. The Uchiha went too far. The great toad sage fell silent for a beat, then spoke. Uchiha Ren. I have never seen him in my dreams. Jiraiya froze. Never? The great toad sage nodded slowly. His past and future are both chaos. Either my power is insufficient, or he is something outside the flow. An anomaly. An intruder in fate. The temple went quiet. Then the great toad sage asked. Say it. What do you want to do? Jiraiya hesitated, then forced the words out. The 4 villages are about to attack Konoha. I want to bring my teacher back. The great toad sage's eyes narrowed. Impossible. Jiraiya's jaw tightened. Then let me borrow Mount Mayaboku's treasure. The sage talisman. The great toad sage's tone turned even heavier. Even more impossible. That talisman is filled with senjutsu chakra. It can pull someone back from the brink of death once. But Hiruzen is already dead. Jiraiya bowed his head, voice stubborn. I believe you have a way. The world is in chaos. Konoha is on the edge. I want you to intervene. The great toad sage sighed. The sage talisman is out of the question. But for Konoha. For the world. I can use a forbidden technique. Jiraiya looked up sharply. Which? The great toad sage's voice dropped. Edo Tensei. Jiraiya's eyes widened. Edo Tensei? Isn't that a forbidden technique in the Scroll of Seals? Fukasaku's face darkened. Jiraiya. Shima scolded too. The great sage has lived since the era of the Sage of 6 Paths. To him, that's a small technique. Jiraiya coughed awkwardly. Then, because he was Jiraiya, he got greedy. If we're doing Edo Tensei, then bring back the first and second Hokage as well. That's the only way to truly suppress Ren and the Uchiha. Fukasaku and Shima looked like they were going to explode. Enough. Don't push your luck. But the great Toad Sage didn't get angry. He stared into the distance, thinking of the fog where the future used to be. Then he nodded. Fine. Only magic can fight magic. Perhaps only Senju Hashirama could truly restrain the Uchiha. As for Edo Tensei? To others it was a sin. To him, it was just a tool. The only problem was, he had once promised the Sage of Six Paths not to interfere with the shinobi world lightly. And now, he was about to break that promise. He closed his eyes. Just this once. Chapter 87, Let me show you the power to destroy the world. No one in the shinobi world expected the great Toad Sage to intervene. Not Ren. Not Black Zetsu. But considering the ties between the three great sage lands in Konoha, the great Toad Sage had a reason to move. And as one of the Sage of Six Paths' old followers, even if he disrupted the natural order, the Sage of Six Paths could, at worst, turn a blind eye. Konoha after the coup. After the complete wipeout of Konoha's leadership, Third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, Shimura Danzo, and the rest. The major clans formed a temporary coalition to keep the village from collapsing. The Uchiha, Hyuga, Nara, Akimichi, Yamanaka, Aburame, they all joined hands and took over public order. As for the old Anbu en route, most of them had betrayed Hiruzen and Danzo long ago, if not openly then in where their true loyalty lay. Under Ren's direction, a new Anbu was rebuilt. Konoha's police force was also restructured, expanded to absorb shinobi from every clan, and even capable civilians, so it wouldn't remain a single clan symbol anymore. And to bury Hiruzen's remaining prestige for good, the major clans mass-printed a propaganda document titled, The Third Hokage's 10 Sins. It flooded the village. Alongside it came new policies and decrees, fast, sharp, and uncompromising. For the moment, Konoha was stabilized. But everyone knew the truth. This stability was temporary. Kirigakure, Sunagakure, Kumogakure, and Iwagakure were already mobilizing. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to carve Konoha up while it was bleeding. If Konoha failed to hold, the worst-case outcome was simple. The leaf would be divided and erased from the map. Konoha turns cold. The streets emptied. Merchants, bounty hunters, minor nobles, and huge numbers of civilians. They fled overnight, trying to escape before the gates became a battlefield. The clans didn't stop them. Ren's stance was blunt. If you run the moment Konoha bleeds, then don't come crying later. When an avalanche hits, no snowflake is innocent. If they wanted to leave, fine. Get out. Don't look back. Guy and Kakashi. On a quiet street, fresh from Ichiraku. Might Guy folded his arms, uncharacteristically serious. Kakashi. This is the worst crisis Konoha's ever faced. It looks like the four great villages are actually going to unite and strike together. Kakashi slowed. Then his voice hardened. War. I live and die with Konoha. Guy grinned and raised his thumb in his usual pose, like he was trying to light the air on fire. That's what I wanted to hear. Youth grows in battle. This time, I'm going to go all out. His fist clenched. For great villages? If they pushed him hard enough, he'd trade his life for theirs. The clan summit. In the Uchiha clan's highest-level conference room. Ren. Fugaku. Hayashi Hyuga. Shikaku Nara. Chozura Kimichi. Inoichi Yamanaka. Shibi Aburame. The air was heavy enough to crush breath. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Shikaku broke the silence. Kirigakure is led by Yagura's faction. Reports say even the former Mizukage Yagura, the Three Tails Jinchuriki, is involved. Mei Terumi is with them as well, Kirigakure's public face. Sunagakure, the fourth Kazakage, Raza, personally. Iwagakure, the third Tsuchikage, Anoki, personally. Kumogakure, the fourth Raikage, and the Eight Tails Jinchuriki, Killer Bee, personally. Choza's expression darkened. That's insane. They're not holding anything back. Inoichi took a slow sip of tea, eyes cold. This isn't pressure. They've decided Konoha is meat. Hayashi slammed the table and stood up, veins tight with fury. Bastards. All they know is kicking people while they're down. Fugaku exhaled hard. We can't fight four fronts. We hold Konoha and force them to come here. The clan heads nodded. Even at full strength, Konoha couldn't sustain a four-front war. And now Konoha had just lost its entire top layer of leadership, plus a chunk of elite forces. Shikaku let out a bitter laugh. So we fight. Choso's eyes sharpened. And even if we lose, we make them bleed for it. Then, Ren finally raised his head. His voice was flat, almost calm. I killed Konoha's leadership. So I'm not surprised they're trying to take advantage. He looked around the room once. And smiled. This time, I'll show you what it means. To wield the power to destroy the world. He stood, turned, and walked out of the conference room without another word. Chapter 88, hit Konoha first, split the loot after. While Konoha threw itself into full-scale war preparations, Sunagakure, Kirigakure, Iwagakure, and Kumogakure moved even faster. For the four great villages, this was a once-in-a-generation opening. Knock the number one village off its throne. Split Konoha's resources. Carve up the Land of Fire's territory. And the faster they did it, the better. After all, whether in the Second or Third Shinobi World War, Konoha, as the final victor, had swallowed massive spoils. That steady flood of resources was one of the reasons geniuses kept appearing in the Leaf like they were mass-produced. Now, Konoha was in a weak phase. So the conclusion was simple. Hit it. Hard. Under the eyes of the entire shinobi world, the four armies advanced openly and brazenly into the Land of Fire. No disguises, no pretense, no diplomacy. And Konoha didn't send a single force to intercept them. So the allied troops surged forward like a blade sliding into a body's heart, until they finally halted a few kilometers outside Konoha. Land of Fire, the allied forward camp. Inside the central command tent, the lineup was terrifying. Kumogakure, 4th Reikage A, and the 8 Tails Jinchuriki Killer B. Iwagakure, 3rd Tsuchika Jinoki, and the 5 Tails Jinchuriki Han. Sunagakure, 4th Kazakage Raza and Maki. Kirigakure, Elder Genji, Meitarumi, and the 3 Tails Jinchuriki Yagura. If anyone outside saw this tent, they'd go pale on the spot. For Kage. 3 Jinchuriki present in person, Han, Killer B, and Yagura. A combined force that could crush almost any power on the continent. No one spoke at first. Then Raza broke the silence with a cold, satisfied smile. This feels good. We walked into the Land of Fire without lifting a finger. Konoha's scared. Anoki's mouth twitched, half a smile, half a sneer as he glanced at Reikage A. Who would have thought we'd ever be standing on the same side? Reikage A's jaw tightened. Anoki. Don't push your luck. Anoki shrugged like he didn't care. In the Third War, to deal with your father, we used tens of thousands of IWA nin. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of old fear crossing them. Uchiha Ren may not be Madara. But to be safe, I plan to use tens of thousands of IWA nin to surround him. The tent sucked in air all at once. Even Reikage A, who was seconds away from exploding, swallowed hard. Then he stared at Anoki like he was looking at something poisonous. You really are the kind of bastard who survives forever. Anoki snorted. Ren wiped out Konoha's leadership. That means he's dangerous. And frankly, I'm worried tens of thousands of IWA nin plus your 3 villages still won't be enough. Killer B clicked his tongue behind his sunglasses. Idiot moron, no way. Even if Ren's strong, he can't fight an army. Raza's confidence dimmed too, his expression tightening. Konoha's leadership is gone. Their overall strength is down. One man can't carry a whole village. But Anoki's voice stayed heavy. You don't understand what the Uchiha can be. I've seen Uchiha Madara. I fought alongside the 2nd Tsuchikage. And we were still crushed. He let the words settle like stones. Be careful. Ren isn't Madara. But you'd be a fool not to fear what he might become. The tent fell into a rare, uneasy silence. Their confidence had been loud. Now it was edged with caution. Then, finally, Elder Genji spoke, voice low and sharp. Enough. Ren might be strong. But if all 4 villages focus him the moment the war starts, He dies. Reikage nodded immediately. Agreed. Killer Bee's grin returned, lazy, cocky, and violent. Idiot moron. I'll show him what the Eight Tails feels like. Raza gave a decisive nod. Fine. We stay allied for now. We crush Konoha first. How we divide the spoils. We discuss that after Konoha is already broken. No one argued. Because every one of them understood the same thing. This alliance was fragile. Temporary. A knife held together by greed. But for one moment their goals aligned. Hit Konoha first. And only after that. Split the loot. After the meeting. Once Inoki, Raza, and Elder Genji left. Reikage leaned back in his chair, lips curling into a cold smile. Inoki's still the same. Scheming to the bone. His eyes sharpened. When Konoha's finished. We turn on a Wagakure. We settle my father's blood debt. Killer Bee's expression cooled, the playfulness draining out of him. I know. And the tense air turned even colder. Because the truth was simple. They weren't just marching on Konoha. They were marching toward a second war. One they'd start the moment the first was over. Chapter 89, On the Brink, Conqueror's Haki. The next day. The four great villages' armies moved out. Like a storm sweeping in, they flattened the towering trees near Konoha's approach, pushing them down in one brutal wave, then cleared a battlefield several kilometers wide, clearly intending to use it as the main front. And as they worked, the sky, once bright and cloudless, turned heavy and dark. Black clouds stacked layer upon layer, like the heavens were about to collapse, pressing down on everyone's lungs. Not long after, the battlefield was ready. The forces lined up in neat formation across the open ground. Sunigakure, a little over 2,000. Kirigakure, a little over 2,000. Kumogakure, a little over 2,000. Iwagakure, over 20,000. The IWA army in the middle was a black tide, so dense it made people's scalps prickle just looking at it. Because they were attacking together, every Sunanin, Kirinin, IWA-nin, and Kumo-nin wore the same expression. Heat in their eyes. Excitement in their blood. They looked like they'd already eaten Konoha alive. Look, Reikage-sama and Killer Bee-sama are out. A Kumo shinobi shouted, voice shaking with excitement. Instantly, countless eyes turned toward the Kumogakure front. There. The fourth Reikage, in his raiment, stepped forward with a hard, grim face. Beside him, Killer Bee strolled out wearing black shades, 7 swords strapped across his back. Neither man released any visible chakra pressure. But the moment they appeared, the Kumo ranks straightened like steel. Their morale rose without anyone needing to say a word. Then, 4th Kazakage Raza is out. 3rd Tsuchikage Inoki is out. Elder Genji is out. One after another, the top-tier leaders stepped into view. Raza, Inoki, Elder Genji. And with their arrival, the Allied Army's battlefield aura finally stopped being contained. It spilled outward. A violent tide of intent, a collective hunger for blood. Yet across the distance, Konoha stayed silent. No horns. No movement. No reply. 1 minute. 10 minutes. 20. Time stretched, tight and suffocating, until the Allied troops' war intent reached its peak. Inoki, Elder Genji, and Raza exchanged glances. Then they all gave a small, cold nod. The meaning was obvious. If Konoha wanted to hide like a turtle, then they'd crack the shell themselves. Ready. In the next instant, all 4 raised their right hands. That simple gesture snapped through the Allied ranks like lightning. Weapons tightened in fists. Feet dug in. Breaths sharpened. War was one command away. But then, Konoha finally moved. Leaf Shinobi poured out at high speed, streaking into the open ground. They're here. Konoha's finally coming out. The leaders of the 4 villages smiled, cold and satisfied. They weren't afraid of losing. They were afraid Konoha wouldn't show. Now that the leaf had stepped onto the field, they could crush it head-on. And the thought made their blood sing. WHUM. In a single breath, Inoki, Elder Genji, and Raza released their presence. The moment their battle intent flared, it linked with the intent of thousands upon thousands behind them, merging into one monstrous pressure that rolled forward like a tidal wave. They weren't even trying to kill yet. They were trying to break Konoha's spine first, with sheer momentum. The Leaf ranks felt it immediately. So strong. They're sure they've already won. Even the Konoha shinobi who didn't fear death still frowned. Because the worst thing in war wasn't numbers. It was being crushed in spirit before the first strike. Uchiha Fugaku. Hyuga Hayashi. Narashikaku. Even they felt their nerves tighten. This was bad. Very bad. Then a calm voice cut through it. You watch. I'll go play first. A sharp gust. A figure vanished from the leaf formation and landed at the center of the battlefield. Ren. Uchiha Ren stood alone between two oceans of soldiers. And the allied lines reacted instantly. That's Uchiha Ren, focus fire on him the moment it starts. Reikage barked the order loud enough to carry across the field. Anoki, Raza, Elder Genji, Killer Bee, and Yagura all paused for a fraction of a second. Because Ren didn't look like what they expected. No outward killing intent. No obvious chakra eruption. No monster aura. Just a young man, plain, almost casual, standing there like he'd stepped out for a walk. Some shinobi even blurted it out, confused. Seriously? That's him? He killed Hiruzen and the Leaf leadership? He doesn't look like a demon. Rin just rolled his shoulders like he was waking up. Finally. I can go all out. Let's see how my tremor power performs in a real war. He cracked his neck once. And in that tiny, lazy motion, his presence changed. It wasn't chakra. It wasn't genjutsu. It wasn't a technique anyone in the shinobi world could name. It was something deeper. A pressure that made instincts scream. A king's will. A ruler's dominance. As if the world itself had recognized a predator stepping onto the throne. And then, boom. Conqueror's haki erupted from Ren like a roaring tsunami. Centered on him, a vast invisible shockwave of supremacy surged forward, swallowing the allied armies whole. As if the entire battlefield had been ordered to kneel.